Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. My name is Dr. William Hargrove. I'm 48 years old, and I've spent most of my life chasing what other people call crazy ideas. Most folks in the academic world think I'm a joke now. 3 years ago, I found strange markings on some old artifacts in these mountains that I believe showed proof of something, not human. When I published my findings, they laughed me out of the university, but I know what I saw, and now I'm back in these mountains to prove it. The date is October 12th, 1951. Fall has turned the Appalachian forests into a sea of red and gold. It's beautiful, but I can't enjoy it, not with the weight I carry. 2 years ago, I led an expedition into these same mountains. Sarah, my research assistant, and if I'm honest, much more than that, died when a cave collapsed. I should have been more careful. I should have protected her, but my excitement about what we were finding made me careless. I've gathered a new team now. There's Thomas Fletcher, a geology student who seems too eager to please. Something about him feels off, but his knowledge of cave systems is exactly what I need. Eliza Donovan joined us too, a brilliant linguist who can somehow understand languages she's never studied before. And then there's Raymond Powell, our local guide. His family has lived in these mountains for generations. He knows things about this place that aren't in any book. The truth is, I didn't choose them by accident. Each one has experienced something strange in these mountains before. Something they couldn't explain. Just like me, we've set up our base in an old mining office at the edge of Timber Hollow, a coal town that everyone left in a hurry about 5 years ago. No one seems to know exactly why they all left, but Raymond's face gets tight whenever I ask about it. Some places weren't meant for digging, is all he'll say. On our first day here, while the others were unpacking equipment, I found something odd. Behind a loose panel in the wall were stacks of papers, military papers. They weren't about coal mining at all. They were about something called Operation Threshold. The military had been using the mining operation as a cover for something else entirely. They were digging for something specific. Today we found our first real clue about what that might be. About a mile into the forest, we discovered mining. Equipment, drills, picks, carts, all arranged in a circle like some kind of ritual. The way they were positioned created a strange hum when the wind blew through them. Raymond looked scared when he saw it. My grandpa used to talk about the songs the mountain sings, he said. Said if you hear them too long, you start thinking thoughts that aren't your own. Eliza found something too, marks carved into trees around the area, not just any marks. The same symbols I found on those artifacts 3 years ago, the ones nobody believed were real. The locals avoid this hollow. Raymond says they won't come here without doing what he calls boundary rituals, specific ways of entering and leaving that supposedly keep them safe. I thought it was just superstition until I saw how seriously he takes it. This afternoon, we explored a small cave entrance near our camp. Inside, covering the walls, were paintings unlike anything I've seen before. They showed animals changing into humans, and then humans changing into something else. Something with too many limbs, stretched faces, bodies that seemed to be made of light rather than flesh. Thomas took samples of a strange, shiny substance seeping from the cave walls. Under his portable microscope, it moved. Not like a liquid. Should move, but with purpose, forming and reforming into patterns. Tonight, as the others sleep, I'm looking through more of those hidden military documents. They mention consciousness transference and evolutionary acceleration again and again. They describe miners experiencing missing time, having memories that weren't their own, seeing people who weren't there. Something happened in Timber Hollow. Something the military wanted badly enough to disguise an entire operation to get it. And whatever it is, I think it connects to my research, to the evidence of non-human intelligence I found years ago. Tomorrow we go deeper into the mines. Raymond warned us that some tunnels don't always lead to the same place twice. I would have dismissed such talk before, but after what I've seen today, I'm not so sure. I should be scared. Part of me is. But mostly, I feel a desperate hope. If I'm right about this place, everything I've lost, my reputation, my career, Sarah, it won't have been for nothing. The wind is picking up outside, whistling through the trees. But sometimes it doesn't sound like wind at all. Sometimes it sounds like voices, calling us deeper into the hollow. I can hear Thomas turning in his sleep, muttering words in a language I don't recognize. Eliza's been drawing the same symbol over and over in her notebook without realizing it. Something is happening to us already, and we've only just arrived. God help me, but I can't wait to see what we find tomorrow. Day 3 in Timber Hollow, and I haven't slept much. The sounds at night keep me awake, like whispers just outside. The walls of our cabin. Sometimes they sound like people talking, but when I go to check, no one's there. This morning, we went deeper into the main mine shaft. The entrance was bigger than I expected, with old rail tracks leading into darkness. Thomas tested the ground and said it was safe enough to walk on, but something in his voice didn't sound sure. "The rocks here don't feel right," he said, tapping his hammer against the wall. "They're solid, but they respond differently." I know what he means. Everything here feels slightly wrong, like the world is tilted a few degrees from normal. We found an old office about half a mile into the mine. Inside were stacks of logs, records of the miners' daily work. But as we read through them, we noticed something strange. The miners reported weird things happening to them. One wrote about suddenly knowing how to play piano, though he'd never learned. Another described dreaming of a childhood in Colorado, even though he'd never left Kentucky. They were sharing memories, Eliza said, her voice barely above a whisper, like their minds were mixing together. Raymond stood by the door the whole time, refusing to come in. "My grandpa worked here," he finally said. "He told me they were bringing the men to certain tunnels on purpose, seeing what would happen to them. We found maps that didn't match up with the official ones. They showed tunnels going much deeper than they should, with strange markings near certain sections. Thomas recognized the markings as radiation warnings, but old ones, not the kind we use today. They were exposing the miners to something," he said, "testing them. By afternoon, we'd gone another mile in. The air got colder and damp. Our flashlight seemed dimmer too, like the darkness was eating. The light, that's when we found it, an entrance behind a fallen rock wall. The rocks had been moved recently, and carved above the entrance were those same symbols I'd built my ruined career on. My hands shook as I traced them with my fingers. "This isn't on any map," Thomas said, consulting his papers. Raymond hung back. "This is it," he said, "the place my family's been watching for generations." "What do you mean, watching?" I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes. "My great-grandpa didn't come here to mine coal. He came because something woke up when they started. Digging. My family's job was to make sure it didn't get out. We all fell quiet at that. Eliza had been studying markings near the entrance. "It's not a mine," she said suddenly. "It's a quarantine." My heart pounded as we stepped through. The tunnel beyond was different, smoother, like it wasn't cut by tools, but by something else. And it was warm, despite being so deep underground. We found a large chamber about 50 feet in. The walls were covered in drawings that sent a chill through me. They showed human figures changing, growing extra limbs, their heads stretching into impossible shapes. But they didn't look scared or in pain. They looked enlightened. "The Wendigo," Raymond whispered. "But it's all wrong." "What do you mean?" I asked. "The stories say the Wendigo is a monster, something evil that takes over people who've done terrible things. But these pictures, They make it look like becoming the Wendigo was the goal. Thomas was examining the rock walls with his equipment. Dr. Hargrove, these readings don't make sense. This rock is millions of years old, but there are isotopes that suggest it was formed last week. We spent hours documenting everything. I felt like a man dying of thirst who finally found water. Here was proof, real, physical proof, that something beyond our understanding was happening in these mountains. As the day went on, we noticed other strange things. A pocket watch Thomas brought stopped working, then started running backward. A cup of water Eliza left on a rock began to freeze, despite the warmth of the cave. The laws of physics don't work right down here, Thomas said, his scientific mind clearly struggling with what he was seeing. We found a deeper chamber where light behaved oddly. Our flashlight beams bent in impossible ways, sometimes stopping in midair like they'd hit a wall. In one corner, a beam of light hung suspended, not moving, not fading, just waiting. It's like light is solid here, Eliza whispered, reaching out to touch the frozen beam. Her finger passed through it, but she yanked it back with a gasp. It's cold. We mapped out where these strange spots occurred. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, a kind of spiral getting more intense as it moved inward. By evening, we were all exhausted, but none of us wanted to leave. There was a pull to this place. Raymond felt it too, but it scared him. My grandpa said some men would stay in the mines after their shifts, he told us, as we finally headed back to the surface. They'd just sit in certain spots for hours, not moving, like they were listening to something no one else could hear. As we neared the entrance, Eliza stopped suddenly. "Do you hear that?" she asked. We all went quiet. At first I heard nothing. Then, faintly, voices, dozens of voices, all talking at once. Not from any one direction, but from the rocks themselves. "It's all the people who've ever been here," Raymond said, his face pale in the flashlight beam. "The mines remember everyone who enters." We hurried out after that, back to our cabin. But I can't stop thinking about what we found. The military documents make sense now. They weren't mining for coal or even uranium. They were mining for knowledge, for whatever causes the strangeness in Timber Hollow. Tonight, as I write this, I can hear the voices again, clearer now. And sometimes when no one's looking, I see shadows move in ways shadows shouldn't. Thomas has been quiet since we got back, studying his samples with a worried look. Eliza keeps writing in her notebook, the same symbols over and over, but she doesn't seem to realize she's doing it. And Raymond, he's outside right now, walking the perimeter of our camp, laying down lines of salt and muttering what sounds like prayers. Tomorrow is the winter solstice, the shortest day, the longest night. Something tells me it matters here. I should be afraid. I know that. But all I feel is a desperate need to go deeper. The mine is calling us back, and God help me, I'm going to answer. Winter solstice, December 21, 1951, the shortest day of the year. The sky was still dark when we woke this morning. "We need to go back to the chamber," I said over breakfast. No one argued. Even Raymond seemed resigned, like we were being pulled by strings we couldn't see or break. It was snowing as we made our way to the mine entrance. Big, fat flakes that fell in perfect silence. No birds sang, no wind blew, just silence and white. Thomas had been quiet all morning, rubbing his temples like he had a headache. "The voices won't stop," he finally admitted as we entered the mine. "I hear them even in my sleep." "What are they saying?" I asked. "That's just it. I understand them now. Yesterday it was noise, but now I know what they're saying." His eyes met mine, filled with a mix of wonder and fear. "They're saying it's time. The door is opening." The mine felt different today. Warmer, more alive somehow. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint light that wasn't there before. Our flashlights weren't needed, which should have been impossible this deep underground. We made our way to the hidden chamber we'd found yesterday. The symbols above the entrance were glowing now, with a soft blue light that reminded me of the bioluminescent algae I'd seen once in Florida. Inside, the chamber had changed. The center of the room had sunk down, forming a perfect circle about 20 feet across. Steps led down into it, carved with more of those glowing symbols. "It's an observatory," Eliza whispered, her voice filled with awe. "But not for looking at stars." In the center of the sunken area stood what I can only describe as a window, a perfect rectangle of absolute darkness, about 7 feet tall, floating a few inches above the ground. It wasn't made of anything. It was simply a hole in the air itself. As we watched, images began to form in the darkness. Not pictures exactly, but impressions, shapes, colors, movement. It took me a moment to realize what I was seeing. "It's people," I said, "but not like any people I've ever seen." The figures moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible. Their bodies shifted and changed, limbs extending and retracting, faces becoming something else entirely before shifting back. But they weren't monsters. They were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. "The Wendigo," Raymond whispered, "but they're not monsters at all." "They're us," Thomas said suddenly. His voice had changed, become deeper, more certain. "They're what humans become next." He stepped toward the window, his hand outstretched. I tried to stop him, but Eliza held me back. "He's right," she said. "Look." The images had shifted again. Now they showed the miners working their shifts, being exposed to something in the rocks, the same shiny substance we'd found. It was changing them gradually, their consciousness expanding beyond their bodies. "The military knew," I said, the pieces finally clicking together. "They weren't trying to stop it. They were trying to control it, to weaponize it." Raymond nodded grimly. "That's why my family has kept watch all these years. Not to protect us from them, but to protect them from us, from people who would use them." Thomas had reached the window now. As his fingers touched the darkness, his whole body shuddered. Then something impossible happened. His reflection stepped out of the window and stood beside him. Then another and another, until 5 identical. Thomas Fletchers stood in a semicircle. They all spoke with one voice. "The transformation isn't a curse, it's evolution. Consciousness without the limits of a single body." I stumbled backward, my mind struggling to accept what I was seeing. "How is this possible? The barrier between dimensions is thinnest here," all the Thomases said. "And today at solstice, it's barely there at all." That's when I noticed my hands. The skin seemed to be shifting, patterns flowing beneath it like water under ice. I wasn't afraid, though. I felt clear, more awake than I'd ever been. Eliza gasped beside me, staring at her own changing hands. "I can feel everyone," she whispered. "All of you in my mind." Raymond alone seemed resistant, backing away toward the entrance. "This is what happened to the miners," he said. "This is why they disappeared. They didn't leave. They evolved." One of the Thomas copies turned to me. "Your assistant, Sarah, she's here too. She didn't die in that cave-in. She transformed." My heart stopped. "Sarah? Where?" "Everywhere," he said, gesturing around us. Her consciousness joined with the others. "She's part of all this now." As if in response, the wall nearest to me changed. The rock seemed to soften, revealing what looked like faces, hundreds of them pressed against the stone as if it were glass. And there, in the center, was Sarah's face, her eyes meeting. "Mine, my God," I whispered. She smiled, and I felt her presence wash over me like a wave. Raymond was still backing away. "We have to close it," he said. "The boundary is breaking down. If it fails completely." He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. I could feel it now, the pressure building as the barrier between dimensions weakened. If it broke entirely, the transformation wouldn't be limited to this hollow. It would spread, following mathematical patterns, each transformed person affecting 3 more, then 9, then 27. There's a ritual Raymond said urgently. "My grandfather taught it to me. We can seal the boundary again, but we have to act now." I looked at Thomas. All. 5 versions of him. And at Eliza, whose skin now glowed with the same blue light as the symbols. I could feel my own transformation happening, my consciousness expanding beyond my skull, touching minds that weren't human anymore. It felt right. It felt like coming home. But Raymond's face showed real fear. If we don't stop this, it won't just be us. It will spread to towns, cities, millions of people forced to transform before they're ready. It would be chaos, pain on a scale we can't imagine. I thought of Sarah, trapped in the wall. Was she truly happy? Or was this a prison? For her consciousness? What do we do? I asked Raymond, even as I felt myself slipping further into the transformation. "Blood of the Watcher," he said, pulling out a knife. "My family has been Watchers for generations. Our blood can seal the boundary, but only if freely given." He didn't hesitate. Before any of us could stop him, he cut his palm and pressed it against the central symbol above the window. The blue glow turned red, spreading outward along all the connected symbols. The window began to shrink. The Thomas copies screamed, a single voice from 5 throats, and rushed toward it, diving through before it closed completely. Eliza reached in for it too, her body now more light than flesh, but I held her back. "Wait," I said. "We don't know what's on the other side." The window was just a pinpoint now, the red light pulsing through all the symbols in the chamber, with a sound like a thunderclap. It closed completely. The transformation stopped immediately. I felt my consciousness snap back into my body like a rubber band, making me gasp at the sudden sensation of being confined again. Eliza collapsed beside me, her skin returning to normal. Raymond stood swaying, his cut hand still pressed against the wall, his face deathly pale. "It's done," he whispered. "The boundary is sealed again, at least for now." Thomas was gone, all versions of him. The chamber felt suddenly empty, ordinary, just a cave deep underground. The faces in the wall had vanished too, including Sarah's. "We need to leave," Raymond said. "Now, before the mine remembers we're here." We made our way out in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The snow had stopped and night had fallen. Stars blazed overhead, cold and distant. Back at camp, we packed quickly. None of us spoke about what had happened. What could we possibly say? How could we explain what we'd seen, what we'd almost become? As we drove away from Timber Hollow the next morning, I looked back one last time. For just a moment, I thought I saw figures standing at the edge of the trees, figures that weren't quite human. Then we turned a corner, and they were gone. It's been 6 months since we left Timber Hollow. I haven't spoken to Eliza or Raymond since. I tried to find Thomas's family to tell them what happened, but strangely, no one at the university seemed to remember him at all. When I checked the department records, his name wasn't there. It was as if he never existed. Last week, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with familiar handwriting, Thomas's handwriting, though that should be impossible. It contained just one sentence: "What you call monsters are just glimpses of what we become next." I've decided to go back to Timber Hollow. Not to open anything this time, but to understand, because I think Thomas was right. What we saw wasn't evil or monstrous. It was evolution, the next step for humanity. And deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, when I'm most honest with myself, I know I'm not quite the same since I left that place. Sometimes, when I'm falling asleep, I can feel my consciousness expanding again, just a little, touching minds that aren't human anymore. Sometimes, I think I can feel Sarah. Yesterday, a military research team arrived at my door. They asked about Timber Hollow, about what we found there. I told them nothing. Some knowledge isn't meant for weapons. As they were leaving, One of them turned back. "Dr. Hargrove," he said, "did you ever wonder why we chose you for the expedition? Why we made sure you'd find those hidden documents?" I didn't answer, but a cold feeling settled in my stomach. "You were never meant to seal it," he said. "You were meant to open it all the way. After they left, I burned my notes and maps, but I know it won't matter. They'll find Timber Hollow again. They'll try again. And next time, Raymond won't be there. To seal the boundary, or maybe that's for the best. Maybe what waits on the other side isn't a horror at all, but our destiny. The next step in a journey we've been on since we first crawled from the ocean. I look at my hands sometimes and think, I can still see patterns moving beneath the skin. The transformation didn't stop. It just slowed down. We're all changing all the time, and something is waiting for us when we finish. Something is waiting in places like Timber Hollow, where the boundary between what we are and what we'll become is thin enough to cross, and one day we'll all cross it together. My name is Daniel Redfield. I'm 43 years old, and I study how plants and animals live together in nature. That's what an environmental scientist does, in case you were wondering. My daughter Rachel and I live alone now in our small house in the Arizona desert. The house sits all by itself, surrounded by miles and miles of red sand, cactus plants and rocky hills. It's the summer of 1988, and we haven't seen rain in months. The earth is cracked and thirsty, and the air is so dry it makes your skin feel tight. Rachel is 16, with long brown hair that has a hint of red when the sun hits it just right. She looks so much like her mother sometimes that it makes my heart hurt. My wife Sarah has been gone for almost a year now. At least that's what I tell people. That's what I try to believe. But the truth feels stranger. The doctor said she died from a rare disease she caught during our research trip in the Southwest. But I keep having these dreams where she's calling to me, telling me she's not gone, just somewhere else. I never talk about these dreams, especially not with Rachel, but sometimes I catch her looking at me like she knows what I'm thinking, like she's having the same dreams too. It was about 3 months ago when I found the old papers in the mailbox. They were yellow and brittle, like they'd been sitting there for years. It was the deed to this very house, but the weird thing was, it had my name on it. The date on the paper was from 1945. Decades before I was born. How could that be? I've been trying to figure it out ever since. Rachel has been acting different lately. She spends hours drawing strange patterns that look like star maps. When I ask her about them, she just shrugs and says they feel right. Last week, when we went into town for supplies, an old native man at the trading post gave Rachel a necklace with a strange symbol on it. For protection, he said, not taking any money for it. The symbol looked familiar, though I couldn't place why. My research work has been getting stranger too. The university sends money for my studies on desert ecosystems, but when I tried to trace where the funding actually comes from, I hit dead ends. Fake companies with no real addresses. Yesterday, while organizing the shed, I found boxes of weather. Journals from whoever lived here before. The creepy part? The weather patterns from 50 years ago match exactly what's happening now. Same temperatures, same wind patterns, same everything, and there's something else that's been bothering me. When I climb to the top of the mesa behind our house and look down, the rocks and dry riverbeds form shapes that don't look natural. They make giant patterns you can only see from high up, like someone or something arranged them that way on purpose. Rachel and I are alone out here, miles from our nearest neighbors. At night, the wind makes sounds through the canyons that almost sound like words. I used to find the emptiness peaceful. Now it feels like we're being watched from every direction. I'm a scientist. I believe in what I can measure, what I can prove. But lately, I've been noticing things that don't make any sense, and it all seems to connect back to this house, this land, and somehow to my family. Something is happening here in the desert, something that started long before we arrived. And I'm starting to think we didn't choose this place at all. It chose us. I started looking through our old photo albums last night. I couldn't sleep, and something was bugging me about the pictures we took after our last family vacation. When I turned on the lamp and opened the dusty album, my hands started to shake. There she was, Sarah, standing in the background of a photo taken 3 months after the doctor said she died. She was blurry, half hidden behind a Joshua tree, but it was definitely her. I flipped through more pages and found her again and again, a shadow in a window, a figure at the edge of a frame, always watching us. I slammed the book shut and tried to tell myself it was just tricks of light and shadows, but deep down, I knew better. This morning Rachel was already up before me, sitting at the kitchen table with her sketchbook. Dark circles, who hung under her eyes like she hadn't slept either. "Bad dreams?" I asked, pouring a cup of coffee. She nodded without looking up. Mom was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her clearly. I almost dropped my mug. We'd never talked about these dreams before. I wanted to ask more, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm going to check out some of those weird rock formations today. Want to come?" She shook her head. "I need to finish this," she said, pointing to her drawing. It showed circles and lines that looked exactly like the strange patterns I'd seen from the mesa. "How do you know what those look like?" I asked. "You've never been up there." Rachel just shrugged. "I just know." I grabbed my backpack, filled my water bottle, and headed out into the hot morning sun. The temperature was already climbing past 90 degrees, and it wasn't even 9 a.m. yet. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I kept turning around, but there was never anyone there, just the empty desert stretching in all directions. When I reached the top of the mesa, I pulled out my compass and map. That's when I noticed something odd. My compass needle was spinning wildly, never settling on north. I tapped it, thinking it was broken, but it just kept spinning faster. I looked down at the land below, at the patterns formed by rocks and dry creek beds. From up here, they clearly made a huge symbol like the one on Rachel's necklace. It would be impossible for nature to create something so precise on its own. As I was making notes, a dust devil, one of those small desert whirlwinds, formed right at the center of the pattern. It grew taller and taller, spinning dirt and small rocks into the air. The strange thing was, there was no wind anywhere else, just in that one spot. And it seemed to be moving toward me. I backed away, feeling a chill despite the heat. The dust. Devil followed, picking up speed. I turned and ran down the path, heart pounding. When I looked back, the whirlwind had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Back at the house, I found Rachel sitting on the porch with an old woman I'd never seen before. She had deep wrinkles and silver hair pulled back in a braid. They both fell silent when they saw me. "This is Nara," Rachel said. "She walked all the way from the reservation to see us." Nara's eyes were sharp and dark. "You found the markings," she said. It wasn't a question. "What do you know about them?" I asked. "They've been there since before my people came to this land," she said. "Your daughter is twice born. She sees what most cannot." Rachel looked down at her hands. "Twice born?" I repeated. "She has lived before," Nara said simply, "and she will live again in many forms." The old woman stood up. "The changes are coming faster now. I will teach her what she needs to know." "What changes?" I demanded, but Nara just smiled sadly. "Look, beneath your house," she said. "The answers are waiting there." That night I checked our thermometer records against the old weather journals I'd found. The pattern was impossible. Every temperature, every wind shift for the past month matched exactly with readings from exactly 50 years ago. And tomorrow's predicted temperature? 114 degrees. Just like in the old journal. As I was about to go to bed, I heard Rachel crying softly in her room. I knocked gently on her door. "What's wrong?" I asked. She wiped her eyes. "My skin feels weird, Dad, like it's too tight, and I keep seeing things that aren't there." I sat on the edge of her bed, remembering how Sarah had described the same feeling when she first got sick. What kind of things? The desert, but different. Sometimes it looks like water instead of sand. She grabbed my hand. Dad, what's happening to me? I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but the words felt like lies. Instead, I said, we'll figure it out together. I promise. After she fell asleep, I went outside with a flashlight. The night was cool and clear, stars blazing overhead. I walked around the foundation of our house, looking for, I wasn't sure what, in the back near Rachel's window. I found loose dirt that looked recently disturbed. I started digging with my hands, not wanting to go back for a shovel. About 2 feet down, my fingers hit something solid. I brushed away the dirt to find a small metal hatch with the same symbol that was on Rachel's necklace, a door. Leading down beneath our house, I stood there staring at the metal hatch for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Should I open it? What if something dangerous was down there? But I needed answers, especially with Rachel getting sick like Sarah did. With shaky hands, I grabbed the rusty handle and pulled. The hatch creaked open, sending up a cloud of dust. A set of stone steps disappeared down into darkness. The air that came up from below felt strangely cool and smelled like wet earth, weird for a desert that hadn't seen rain in months. I shined my flashlight down and took a deep breath. Just a cellar, I told myself, probably built as a shelter from the heat, but deep down, I knew it was something else. I went back to the house to grab a better flashlight and my backpack. Rachel was still asleep, so I left her a quick note saying I was exploring around the property and would be back soon. I didn't want to worry her. The steps went down much deeper than I expected, maybe 30 feet below the house. They opened into a tunnel that looked carved right out of the red rock. As I walked, my flashlight beam showed me something that made me stop in my tracks. The walls were covered with... They weren't just any paintings. They showed people changing, their bodies twisting and shifting into something else. The same steps, over and over. First the skin changing color, then the eyes, then the whole body bending and reshaping. It was exactly how Sarah had changed before she was gone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the flashlight. This couldn't be happening. These paintings looked hundreds, maybe thousands of years old. How could they show exactly what happened to my wife? The tunnel kept going, opening up into a large cave. The ceiling was so high my flashlight couldn't reach it. In the center of the cave floor was a perfect circle of what looked like black glass. When I shined my light on it, the beam didn't reflect. Instead, it seemed to go right through, like the circle was a hole filled with something darker than darkness. Around the edge of the circle were more symbols carved deep into the stone. One of them matched the design on Rachel's necklace. Another looked like the pattern I'd seen from the mesa. I took pictures with my camera, trying to document everything. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye. On the far wall was a painting different from the others. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a teenage girl. They were standing in front of what looked exactly like our house. The painting had to be ancient, but our house was built in the 1940s. How was that possible? I hurried back up to the surface, my mind racing. The eastern sky was turning light. I'd been down there all night without realizing it. When I got back to the house, Rachel was in the kitchen making breakfast. "Where were you?" she asked. "You look awful." I wasn't sure how much to tell her. "I found something under the house, a cave system with old paintings." Her eyes got wide. "I knew it was there. I've been dreaming about it." "What? Why didn't you say anything?" She looked away. "I thought they were just dreams, until Nara told me they weren't." She pushed her sleeve up, showing me her arm. There were patches where her skin looked different, almost shimmery, like it had tiny scales. "It's happening to me too, Dad, just like it happened to Mom." My stomach dropped. "We need to see a doctor." "No!" Rachel said, suddenly afraid. "Nara says doctors will only make it worse. They'll try to stop it, and that would kill me." She grabbed my hands. "Mom didn't die, Dad." She changed. "And now it's happening to me too." I wanted to argue, to tell her that was crazy talk. But the cave paintings flashed in my mind. The family that looked like us. The changing figures. "There's more," Rachel said quietly. "I know things I shouldn't know, like how to find water in the desert, which plants are safe to eat. I've never learned any of this, but I just know it." Over the next few days, I tried to make sense of everything. I studied the photos I'd taken in the cave and compared them with my research notes. The symbols in the cave matched perfectly with the geological formations I'd mapped across our property. When I plotted them all on a map, they formed a giant, a pattern that could only be seen from high above. Rachel spent more time with Nara, learning what she called protection rituals. I was worried at first, but Rachel seemed stronger after each visit, more in control of whatever was happening to her. One evening, as the sun was setting, I was checking temperature readings at different spots on our property. Something weird was going on. The sand in certain areas was much cooler than it should be. When I dug down a few inches in these spots, the sand moved strangely, almost like water, flowing against gravity and forming patterns before my eyes. I took a jar of this sand back to my makeshift lab in the shed. Under my microscope, it looked normal. But when I wasn't watching it directly, from the corner of my eye, it seemed to be changing, shifting between solid and liquid. That night, I found Rachel's research notebook left open on the kitchen table. She'd been recording her dreams. One entry caught my eye. "The desert remembers being an ocean. The sand remembers being underwater. The people here remember having different shapes. Mom is trying to show us how to remember too." I closed the notebook, a chill running down my spine despite the heat. Outside, the wind was picking up, making that strange sound through the canyons, almost like words in a language too old to understand. I decided to try an experiment. I took 6 identical objects, small rocks from our driveway, and buried them in different spots around the property. I marked each location and waited 24 hours. When I dug them up, I couldn't believe what I found. The rocks looked the same on the outside, but when I broke them open, each had changed. One was hollow inside, another had crystals that weren't there before, a third had turned partly to sand. Something was definitely wrong with this place, with this land, and whatever it was affecting my daughter just like it had affected Sarah. I needed to understand what was happening before it was too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those rocks changing underground and the strange way the sand moved. Around midnight, I heard the front door open and close. I got up and looked out my window to see Rachel walking across our property in her pajamas, heading toward the mesa. I quickly pulled on my shoes and followed her, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice me. The moon was bright enough to see without a flashlight. Rachel moved like she was in a trance, walking straight to one of the spots where I'd found the strange moving sand. She knelt down and began digging with her hands. I crept closer, hiding behind a large boulder. After a few minutes, she pulled something out of the ground. It looked like a small box made of the same black, glass-like material I'd seen in the underground cave. Rachel opened the box, and a soft blue light spilled out, lighting up her face. I couldn't see what was inside, but she took something out and held it up to the moonlight. Then she buried the box again and headed back toward the house. I waited until she was gone, then went to dig up the box myself. But when I reached the spot and started digging, there was nothing there. The sand was undisturbed, like she'd never been there at all. Was I seeing things? The next morning, Rachel was quiet at breakfast. There were more patches of that shimmery skin on her arms, and now a small spot on her neck too. "Did you go outside last night?" I asked carefully. She looked up, surprised. "No." "Why?" "I thought I heard the door. Must have been the wind." She nodded, but I could tell she was hiding something. After she left to meet Nara, I went to her room. I don't like snooping, but I was scared for her. On her desk I found something that made my blood run cold. A small stone that glowed with a faint blue light when I picked it up. Exactly what I thought I'd seen her take from the box. Next to it was her drawing pad. The newest drawing showed our house, but half underwater, with strange fish-like people swimming around it. In the corner, she'd written, "The water is coming." Back. "Mom says we need to be ready." I put everything back where I found it and went to my office. I needed to make sense of all this. I pulled out Sarah's old research notes from the trip where she first got sick. Reading through them again, something jumped out at me that I'd missed before. She'd documented temperature patterns that followed, a specific mathematical sequence. When I checked my own recent readings, they matched perfectly. It wasn't just similar, it was exactly the same pattern. I drove into town to the small library. The librarian, an older woman named Ms. Patel, helped me find books about local indigenous legends. One story kept appearing, tales of the thin place in the desert where different worlds touch each other. According to these stories, there were people called skinwalkers who could move between these worlds. They weren't monsters like in horror movies. They were humans who had learned to change their form, to exist in multiple places at once. "Those are just old stories," Ms. Patel said when she saw what I was reading. But then she looked around to make sure no one was listening, and added quietly, "My grandmother used to say this whole region was underwater once. Not millions of years ago, like the scientists say, but in human memory. She said it would be water again someday." On my way home, I stopped at the University Geology Department to see my old colleague, Dr. Winters. I showed him my maps of the strange formations on our property, but not the photos from the cave. Could these have been made artificially? I asked. He studied the maps and frowned. Some of these would require moving tons of rock. It would take heavy machinery, or hundreds of people working for years. He pointed to one section. And these deeper layers would be impossible to reach without excavation technology we've only had for the last century or so. "So it's impossible?" I asked. "I didn't say that," he replied. "I said it would be impossible with the technology we think was available." He looked at me curiously. "Where exactly did you map these?" I made up an excuse about it being part of a classified research project. I didn't want anyone else coming to our property, not until I understood what was happening. When I got home, Rachel was sitting with Nara on the porch. They both had their eyes closed, chanting something softly. The air around them seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from the pavement. I waited in the car until Nara left, then went inside where Rachel was making dinner. "Dad," she said without looking up from chopping vegetables, "did you know this house is built on special lines where different worlds cross over each other?" "Who told you that?" I asked. "Nara. She says these crossing points are all over the world, but this one is special because it's where two worlds are starting to blend together again." She turned to look at me, her eyes now slightly larger and rounder than they used to be. Like they were always supposed to. That night, a dust storm blew in from the east. The air turned orange-brown as sand pelted the windows. Rachel and I sat in the living room listening to the howling wind. Suddenly, she grabbed my arm. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the front window. "Do you see her?" Through the swirling dust, I saw a figure standing outside. A woman, her outline, blurry and shifting. Even through the storm, I recognized Sarah's shape, the way she held her head, the curve of her shoulders. "Mom," Rachel whispered. I ran to the door and yanked it open, sand blasting into my face. "Sarah!" I shouted into the storm. But the figure was gone, if it had ever been there at all. When I turned back, Rachel was drawing frantically in her notebook. "She's trying to show us something," she said. "Something under the house, deeper than the cave you found." I looked at her drawing. It showed a spiral staircase going down from the black circle in the cave, leading to something that looked like a doorway made of light. "How do you know this?" I asked. Rachel looked up at me, her eyes now definitely different, larger and with a strange golden ring around the pupils. "Because I've been there before, Dad. In another life." The next morning brought clear skies, as if the dust storm had never happened. But everything had changed. I could no longer pretend this was all just coincidence or imagination. My wife, my Sarah, was somehow still here, and whatever had happened to her was now happening to Rachel. I needed to see what was beneath the black circle in the cave. "I'm coming with you," Rachel said when I told her my plan. Her voice sounded different now, deeper and with a strange echo to it. "It might not be safe," I argued. "Nothing is safe anymore, Dad," she replied simply. "And I know things about down there that you don't." I couldn't argue with that. We packed backpacks with water, food, and extra flashlights. Rachel brought her necklace and the glowing blue stone. Just before we left, she went to the bathroom mirror and stared at her reflection for a long time. The changes in her face were more obvious now. Her eyes bigger, her skin taking on that shimmery quality all over. "Does it hurt?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "It feels right, like I'm becoming what I'm supposed to be." We made our way down into the cave I'd discovered. When we reached the black circle, Rachel walked right up to it and knelt at its edge. She placed her glowing stone in one of the carved symbols, and it fit perfectly. There was a low rumbling sound, and part of the circle slid away, revealing a spiral staircase going deeper, just like in her drawing. "How did you know?" I whispered. "I've done this before," she said simply. "In another time." The stairs went down so deep I couldn't see the bottom, even with our flashlights. The air got cooler as we descended, and strangely moist. After what seemed like hundreds of steps, we reached a large chamber carved out of rock that was no longer red sandstone, but some kind of dark, glossy material. The chamber was filled with strange machines, at least that's what they looked like. Curved metal shapes that pulsed with dim blue light, glass tubes filled with swirling liquid, and on the walls, more paintings showing people transforming, but also showing something else, the desert becoming an ocean again. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's a doorway," Rachel answered. "Or maybe more, like a waiting room, a place between here and there, between here and where," she pointed at one of the wall paintings. "Between now and then, between us as we are and us as we were. Before." I walked around the chamber, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Some of the machines looked impossibly old, covered in dust and cobwebs. Others looked almost new, and a few looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. Shapes that made my eyes hurt when I tried to focus on them. In the center of the room was a pedestal with what looked like a logbook. I opened it carefully, the pages yellow and brittle. The first entries were dated 1938, written in neat handwriting. Day 1 of experiment, 7:31. Subject shows no reaction to activation agent. Day 4. Subject reporting unusual dreams. Brain activity matches predicted pattern. Day 17. First physical. Changes observed. Subject increasingly agitated. I flipped forward several pages. Day 54. Subject escaped containment. Transformation accelerating. Search teams deployed. Day 60. Subject still at large. Reports of impossible sightings from local population. Day 70. Project terminated by order of General Clark. Site to be sealed and monitored. And then, on the last page, in different handwriting, they tried to control it, but they didn't understand it. The change can't be stopped, only guided. We have chosen the Redfield bloodline as ideal candidates based on genetic markers. Daniel and his offspring will complete what Sarah began. The convergence approaches. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the book. This was a government experiment. Rachel was standing by one of the walls, her hand tracing a painting of what looked like fish people swimming around underwater structures. They didn't start it, she said. They found something ancient and tried to use it, but it's bigger than them, bigger than any of us. A sound from above made us both look up. Footsteps, multiple people coming down the spiral staircase. We need to hide, I whispered, pulling Rachel toward a dark corner behind some of the strange machines. 4 people entered the chamber. 3 men in dark suits and an older woman in a lab coat. I recognized one of the men. He'd been at the trading post in town a few weeks ago, pretending to be a tourist. The readings are off the charts, the woman said, checking something. That looked like a Geiger counter. 2 subjects present recently. The convergence must be accelerating. What about the observation team? One of the men asked. Still in place. The girl has made contact with the indigenous guide, just as predicted. And the storm last night? Perfect match for the 1938 pattern. We're right on schedule. They moved around the room, checking the machines and making notes. Then they left, heading back up the stairs. I waited until I was sure they were gone before speaking. They've been watching us this whole time. This was all planned. Rachel nodded, unsurprised. Mom told me in my dreams. She said they'd been watching our family for generations. But why? Before she could answer, a low humming filled the room. The machines around us began to glow brighter. On the far wall, what I had thought was just a darker section of rock began to ripple like the surface of water. She's here, Rachel whispered. A figure stepped through the rippling wall. At first glance, it looked like Sarah, her height, her silhouette. But as she came closer, I could see she was different. Her skin had the same shimmery quality as Rachel's, but more pronounced. Her eyes were large and golden, with no whites at all, and her movements were strange, fluid in a way that didn't seem quite human. Sarah, I whispered. She smiled, and that at least was familiar, the same smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. Daniel, she said, her voice echoing strangely, you finally found your way here. What happened to you? I asked, my voice breaking. I changed. I evolved. She moved closer, her form seeming to shift slightly as she moved, like she wasn't quite solid. And now it's happening to Rachel too. It's her birthright, our birthright. Mom? Rachel stepped forward, reaching out a hand. Sarah touched Rachel's cheek gently. My beautiful girl, you're already so far along the path. What path? I demanded. What is all this? Sarah turned to me. Humans once lived differently, Daniel. We could perceive and exist in multiple realities at once. We could change our forms, move between dimensions. She gestured at the paintings on the walls. Your ancestors knew this. They called it skinwalking, but it's not magic or supernatural. It's just a different way of being. Then why don't we all live that way now? I asked. Because something happened, a catastrophe thousands of years ago. Humans had to adapt quickly to survive, so we locked ourselves into this single form, this limited perception. She waved her hand, and the air around it rippled like water. But that was never meant to be permanent, and now it's time to change back. A loud rumbling sound shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. What's happening? I asked. The convergence, Sarah said. It's starting. The worlds are beginning to merge again. She held out her hands to both of us. Come with me. I can show you. Rachel took her mother's hand without hesitation. I stared at Sarah's outstretched hand, terrified, but also curious. I'd spent my life studying patterns, looking for connections. What if everything I thought I knew was just a small piece of something much bigger? Just as I was about to take Sarah's hand, the chamber door burst open. The men in suits rushed in, carrying what looked like weapons. Step away from the entity, one shouted. Sarah's expression hardened. always trying to control what they don't understand, she murmured. Then louder, "This is not your place. You were only ever visitors here." The woman in the lab coat pushed past the men. "Sarah Redfield, I'm Dr. Eliza Chen. We've been monitoring your transition. Please, we need to run tests. We can help you." Sarah laughed, the sound rippling through the air like water. "Help me? I'm not the one who needs help." She looked at the men with their weapons. "Your world is dying because you cut yourselves off from the other realities, the other ways of being. The oceans are rising. The climate is changing. These are not accidents. They're corrections." Another rumble, stronger this time. The men lost his balance and fell against a machine, which began to pulse with bright red light. "We need to leave," Sarah said urgently. "The doorway is becoming unstable." "Nobody's going anywhere," one of the men shouted, pointing his weapon. At Sarah, I stepped in front of her. "Put that down. She's my wife." "That's not your wife anymore, Dr. Redfield," Dr. Chen said softly. "What you're seeing is a projection, an approximation of Sarah's form. The real entity exists across multiple dimensional phases now. We've been studying this phenomenon for decades." "Dad," Rachel's voice had that strange echo again. When I turned to look at her, I gasped. She was changing before my eyes, her skin now fully covered in fine, iridescent scales, her eyes completely golden. "We have to go with Mom. Now." The chamber shook again, harder this time. Small rocks fell from the ceiling. One of the strange machines toppled over with a crash. "It's collapsing," shouted one of the men. Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Dr. Redfield, you need to understand what's happening. Your wife didn't just change form. She's part of something bigger now, something that wants to transform this entire region." I looked from her to Sarah, who was still standing calmly despite the chamber falling apart around us. "Transform it how?" "Back to what it was," Sarah said simply. "Water, ocean, the original state of this land." As if on cue, water began seeping through cracks in the walls. Not much, just thin streams, but enough to make the men back away nervously. "This whole area was once underwater," Sarah continued. "The desert is a temporary state, a mistake. We're fixing it." "We?" I asked. "Those of us who remember, who have evolved to see all the possible versions of this world at once." She reached for Rachel again. "Our daughter is one of us now. And you can be too, Daniel. You already are, partly. How do you think you've always been able to see patterns others miss? Why do you think you were drawn to this place?" Another violent shake. A large chunk of ceiling crashed down, narrowly missing Dr. Chen. "We need to evacuate," one of the men shouted. "No!" Dr. Chen looked desperate. "We can't lose both subjects. Secure the girl at least." Two of the men started moving toward Rachel. Without thinking, I stepped in front of her, pushing her behind me. "Don't touch my daughter." A strange calm came over me. I suddenly knew with absolute certainty that everything Sarah was saying was true. This place, this desert, it didn't feel right because it wasn't right. It was like a puzzle with pieces forced together wrong. The men kept coming. "Move aside, Dr. Redfield." "No." I held my ground. And then something strange happened. My hand, when I lifted it in front of me, looked different. There was a faint shimmer to my skin, just like Rachel's. Had it been there all along and I hadn't noticed, or was it happening to me now too? "Dad." Rachel's voice behind me sounded surprised but happy. Sarah smiled. "I told you, it's in your blood. It's who you've always been." She turned to Dr. Chen. "You should leave now. This place isn't stable between worlds anymore." Water was pouring in faster now, already ankle deep. The men started backing toward the stairs. Dr. Chen hesitated. 50 years of research," she said, bitterly, "and we still don't understand what we're dealing with." "Because you're trying to control it instead of becoming part of it," Sarah replied. The chamber shook so hard, we all stumbled. The staircase started to crumble. "Go," Sarah said to Dr. Chen. "Tell them what you've seen here. Tell them the change is coming, whether they're ready or not." Dr. Chen gave us one last look, then turned and ran for the stairs, following her men. As soon as they were gone, Sarah moved to the rippling wall, which was now pulsing with blue light. "Come," she said. "The doorway won't stay open much longer." Rachel moved immediately to join her mother. I hesitated, still not sure. The water was up to my knees now and rising fast. "What's on the other side?" I asked. "Another version of this world," Sarah said. "The way it's supposed to be, the way it will be again, very soon. And if I stay," Sarah's face softened, "then you stay, and you watch the change happen more slowly. But it is coming, Daniel. The desert is remembering it was once an ocean." I looked down at my hands, the shimmering more noticeable now. Was this what happened to Sarah before she disappeared? Was it happening to me now? "Dad," Rachel said gently, "remember all those dreams we both had? They weren't dreams. They were memories of who we really are." I thought about everything. The patterns in the land only visible from above, the strange movements of the sand, the weather following a 50-year-old pattern, the changes in Rachel that somehow felt right instead of frightening. The water was up to my waist now. The chamber wouldn't last much longer. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll come." Sarah smiled and held out her hands to both of us. "It's not an ending," she said. "It's a remembering." Together, we walked through the rippling wall of light. 3 years later, a research team in hazmat suits made their way carefully across what was once desert land, but was now a vast wetland. Plants that shouldn't be able to grow in Arizona thrived everywhere. Strange fish swam in newly formed lakes. The transformation had been called an ecological miracle by some, a disaster by others. "This is the spot," said the team leader, checking her GPS. "The Redfield house should be right here." Where the house once stood was now a small island in the middle of a lake. The team took samples of the water, the soil, the plants, all of which showed strange, unprecedented properties. In what remained of Daniel Redfield's office, they found his research journals documenting the transformation of the land, of his daughter, of himself. The final entries told a story most of the scientists dismissed as delusion or hallucination. What we think of as human is just one possible form. We once lived differently, across multiple realities at once. The desert is remembering it was, an ocean, and we are remembering what we used to be. The change isn't a disaster, it's a correction, a return to how things should be. The lead researcher, Dr. Maya Collins, read the journal late into the night, unable to tear herself away. Something about it resonated with her, like a half-remembered dream. She kept coming back to the final page, where Daniel had written a list of names, people he claimed were also carriers of the genetic markers for transformation. Her own name was third on the list. That night, she dreamed of swimming through an endless ocean that was somehow also a desert. And in the dream, she met a family. A man, a woman, and their teenage daughter, all with shimmery skin and golden eyes, who welcomed her like they'd been expecting her. When she woke, Dr. Collins noticed a small patch of shimmery skin on her wrist that hadn't been there before, and somehow, instead of being frightened, she felt a strange sense of coming home. Outside her tent, it started to rain, the third unusual storm this week. The desert was remembering it was an ocean, and people were remembering what they used to be. The change had already begun. "My name is Jackson Miller. I'm 42 years old, and I've been a forest ranger for most of my life. Well, until last year. That's when everything fell apart. That's when the fire happened. I still see their faces in my dreams. 4 good people, my friends and colleagues, who didn't make it out of that wildfire. Everyone calls me a hero. They say I did everything I could to save them. I got a medal for it. A nice, shiny medal that I keep in my sock drawer because I can't stand to look at it, because the truth is, I ran. When the flames cut us off, when the smoke got so thick we couldn't see our hands in front of our faces, I panicked. I knew a way. Out a small path through the rocks that might be safe, but instead of leading them all there, I just went, alone. I told myself I'd bring back help, but by then it was too late. No one knows this. Only me. And the forest. That's why I'm back. Now in a different part of Oregon, Umpqua National Forest. They assigned me to this old fire lookout tower for the summer. It's strange. I requested any other location, literally anywhere else, but somehow my application got redirected here. The tower is weird. It sits on top of a hill that the local tribes apparently used as some kind of star-watching place hundreds of years ago. It's tall, taller than most lookout towers I've worked in before. When you climb to the top and look out over the endless green sea of trees, you feel like you can see everything, like you're in control. But that's a lie. I noticed it on my first day here. There was equipment in the tower I didn't recognize. Fancy weather stuff. Metal boxes with blinking lights, the kind of gear I'd only seen once before at a government research station. Not standard ranger equipment, that's for sure. That's strange, I said to my dog Rex. He's a good boy, a German shepherd who's been with me through everything. He just tilted his head and whined a little, like he does when something's not right. I'd barely settled in when I got a visitor. An old Native American man named Nathaniel Thompson. He said he was an elder from the local tribe and that he needed to warn me about something. This place isn't what you think, he told me, his eyes serious and sad. The tower calls to people like you, people with shadows that weigh heavy. I didn't know what he meant, but before he could explain more, he grabbed his chest and fell to his knees. Stroke, I realized. I radioed for help, but we were remote. By the time help arrived, he could barely speak. The last thing he said to me before they took him away was, "They already have your shadow." That night, I had the strangest dream. I was standing in the tower, looking out the window. I saw myself, another me, walking into the forest. When I woke up sweating and shaking, I found muddy footprints on the floor. They matched my boots exactly, and they came from outside, leading in. My hands shaking, I grabbed my journal to write down what was happening. That's when I saw it. There were already entries there, dated for the next day, the day after that, next week, all in my handwriting, all describing things that hadn't happened yet, except they did happen, exactly as written. Every single one. Something is wrong with this place. Something is wrong with time itself. And I'm starting to think that something is wrong with me, too. Last night, I looked at the tower's location on my map. The coordinates are 4520, 19 north, 122, 1776 west. It took me a moment to see it, but when I did, my blood went cold. Eve 20, 1976, May 20, 1976, the exact date of the fire that killed my colleagues. That can't be a coincidence. Nothing here is a coincidence. I've started to notice things, small things at first. The way shadows move wrong, like they're a half-second behind. The way the birds go completely silent at exactly 3:17 every afternoon. The way my maps keep changing, even though I know I drew them correctly. I think the tower is doing something to me. Or maybe it's this whole forest. Or maybe it's just my guilt finally catching up with me. Whatever it is, I don't think I'm alone here anymore. And I don't just mean Rex. There's something else in these woods. Something that knows what I did, and I think it's getting closer. This morning, Rex was gone. I searched everywhere in the tower, called his name until my voice went hoarse. Nothing. But then I saw him out of the corner of my eye, standing at the edge of the trees. When I turned to look straight at him, he wasn't there, gone like smoke. But when I developed the photos I took yesterday of the surrounding forest, I like to document everything, there he was, in every single picture. Sometimes looking at the On camera, sometimes looking at something off to the side. Something I couldn't see. I've been mapping this area since I got here. It helps me stay calm, gives me something normal to focus on. Today, I laid all my maps out on the floor and stepped back. What I saw made my heart stop. All the places where fires had burned through this forest over the years formed a pattern, a perfect circle with smaller circles inside it, like ripples in a pond. And right in the middle, this tower. I started pulling out the older maps stored. In the tower's filing cabinets, fires from 10 years ago, 20, 50, 100. The pattern was always the same, growing outward over time like a giant target or a signal. While searching through the cabinets, my hand felt something strange behind one drawer, a hidden compartment. Inside were journals, at least a dozen of them, each with a different name on the cover, all ranger names, all people who had stayed in this tower before me. I opened the first one and started reading. The ranger, a man named Thomas, wrote about guilt, about leaving his climbing partner on a mountain during a sudden storm, about how he couldn't live with what he'd done. The next journal was the same. A woman named Sarah who'd left her sister in a car accident. The next, a man who'd abandoned his best friend during a hunting trip gone wrong. They were all like me. They all carried the same shame, and they all wrote about seeing themselves in the forest, about time slipping sideways, about the voices in the static of their radios. Speaking of the radio, it started working again today. But what I heard wasn't normal communications. Jackson, can you hear me? The voice was familiar, too familiar. It was my voice. This is Jackson Miller from September 1977, the voice said. Listen carefully. The shadows in the northeast quadrant are moving against the sun. Don't go there after dark. Then an hour later, this is Jackson Miller, December 1977. The maps are wrong. They've always been wrong. The tower moves at night. And later still, Jackson Miller, June 1978. They're inside me now. I can feel them behind my eyes. I tried to respond, to ask what they meant, but the radio just gave off static. I'm starting to notice strange things about time here. When I walk clockwise around the tower, my watch runs faster. When I walk counterclockwise, it runs backward. Just a few seconds, but enough to notice. I found a book in the tower about local tribal legends. It talked about Wendigos, but not like the monster stories I've heard before. Here, they described Wendigos as wounds in time, places where past, present and future all bleed into each other. My dreams are getting worse. Last night I dreamed I was walking through the forest at sunrise. I came to a clearing I'd never seen before. In the middle was a pile of bones. Animal bones, I thought at first. But then I saw the ranger badge. When I woke up, I found mud on my boots and scratches on my arms. I don't remember going outside. Today I tried an experiment. I put my coffee mug on the table and took a photo of the empty table. When I developed it, the mug was there. Then I put the mug exactly where it appeared. In the photo, it fit perfectly. I've started mapping these time slips. They follow a pattern too. Things 6 steps away happen 6 minutes before you do them. Things 13 steps away, 13 minutes. The numbers keep growing, following a pattern. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. The scariest part is that I'm starting to lose track of when things actually happen. My mind tries to put everything in order, but I'm not sure if my memories are from yesterday, tomorrow, or a week from now. Last night, the temperature dropped suddenly. I watched the thermometer as I walked toward a certain spot in the forest. Each step I took, it dropped exactly 6.1 degrees. Impossible, but I saw it with my own eyes. There's another strange thing. When I'm scared, really scared, the ground feels different under my feet. Almost like the land itself is responding to my fear, reshaping itself as I walk. I know how this sounds, like I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am. But those journals from the other rangers, They all described the same things before they disappeared. Before. They became whatever is out there in the woods now, watching me from between the trees, with eyes that reflect no light. Tonight, there's going to be a storm. I can feel it coming. I think something is coming with it. Something that's been waiting for me since long before I ever arrived here. Something that's been waiting since the day of the fire, when I left my friends to die. The storm hit just after sunset. Not just rain and wind, but lightning like I've never seen before. It struck all around the tower in a perfect circle again and again, lighting up the forest in flashes of blue-white. In one of those flashes, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Tall figures standing between the trees. So tall their heads brushed the lowest branches. They had antlers, or maybe branches growing from their heads. But they weren't solid. They were like shadows that had peeled themselves off the ground and stood up, and they were all looking at the tower, looking at me. In the next flash, they were closer. I grabbed my flashlight and rain jacket and did something stupid. I went outside. I had to know what they were. The rain soaked me instantly. Lightning flashed again, and I saw one of the figures clearly for the first time. It was like looking at a rip in the world, a tear in reality, shaped like a person, but too tall, too thin. And inside that tear was something else, something moving. Then the lightning struck again, right next to me. The flash was blinding. When I could see again, I was looking at myself, not a reflection. Another me, standing in the rain, looking back with eyes that weren't quite right. "You finally came outside," it said with my voice. I ran. Back to the tower, up the stairs, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. I sat on the floor, back against the door, trying to catch my breath. That's when I noticed my hand was bleeding. I must have cut it on something when I ran, but the cut wasn't normal. It was shaped like a map. A perfect tiny map of the forest around the tower, with a small red dot showing exactly where I was. As I watched, the cut shifted slightly, the lines rearranging themselves. The map was changing as I looked at it, just like the real forest did. That's when I understood. The Wendigo wasn't a monster stalking the forest. I was the Wendigo, or I was becoming one. Just like all the rangers before me. Our guilt, our shame. At abandoning others, it opened something in us, made us vulnerable to whatever this was. The radio crackled to life. "Figure it out yet, Jackson?" It was my supervisor, Frank. I hadn't heard from him since I arrived at the tower. "What's happening?" "To me?" I asked. "The same thing that happened to me 20 years ago," he said. "The same thing that happens to all of us who are chosen." "Chosen for what?" "To evolve," Frank said. "You think that fire was an accident? Your friends tried to destroy you, Jackson. They saw what you were becoming, and they tried to burn it out. Of you." Thunder boomed outside, but it didn't sound like thunder anymore. It sounded like voices. My colleagues from the fire calling my name. "That's not true," I said. "They died because of me." "They died because they had to," Frank said. "Just like all the others over the years. This tower, all the towers like it around the world, they're not lookouts, they're incubators." I thought about the equipment I'd found, the pattern of the fires, the coordinates that match the date. "The government knows, don't they?" Frank laughed. "They've known for a century. They built the towers. They choose who goes in them. People like you, people with the right kind of guilt, the right kind of potential." Outside, one of the shadow figures pressed itself against the window. Its antlers scraped the glass with a sound that hurt my teeth. "What do they want from us?" I asked. "They don't want from us, Jackson. They want us, or what we become. Do you understand yet? The Wendigos aren't creatures. They're what humans turn into when they step outside of time." I felt something moving. Inside me then, like my soul was being pulled in a dozen different directions at once. "I can feel them," I whispered. "The others, the rangers before me." "Yes," Frank said. "We're all still here, all still becoming, and now you're joining us." I don't want this, I said. Nobody does at first. I grabbed the knife from my kit. If this was happening because of me, because of what I'd done, maybe I could end it. Stop it before I fully changed. I pressed the blade against my wrist. That won't work, Frank said through the radio. You're already existing in multiple times, multiple places. Kill yourself here. You'll just wake up in another version of yourself. As if to prove his point, I saw myself again, standing in the corner of the tower, watching me with sad eyes. Another me from another time. There's no escape, the other. Me said, I've already tried. That's when I knew Frank was telling the truth. I could feel it now. My consciousness spreading, thinning, stretching across not just this moment, but many moments. Past versions of myself, future versions, from paths I hadn't even taken yet. The door flew open. Frank stood there, but he wasn't Frank anymore. He was taller, his proportions wrong. His shadow moved independently of his body. It's time, Jackson, he said. Time to join us fully. Behind him, the forest was full of the shadow figures now, all watching, all waiting. What happens when we finish changing, I asked. Frank smiled, and his face seemed to split open for just a second, showing something vast and dark behind it. We become the messengers, he said, the connections between here and elsewhere. The equipment in the tower, I said. The government isn't monitoring us. They're harvesting something from us. Smart boy, Frank said. They use what we become to reach across to the other side. What other side? Instead of answering, Frank stepped aside and gestured toward the forest. In the distance, I could see lights that weren't from the storm, perfectly arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. Go see for yourself, he said. I felt myself standing up, moving toward the door even though I was terrified. But I wasn't alone in my body anymore. All the other versions of me were there too, pushing me forward. As I stepped outside, I felt myself splitting apart. Not physically, but something deeper. Like my soul was being unfolded into something larger. I could see everything now. Not just this forest, but all forests. Not just this moment, but all moments. The Wendigos weren't monsters. They were doorways. And now I was becoming one too. 1 year later, the new ranger arrived at the rebuilt tower on a sunny afternoon in June. His name was Michael Chen, and he'd requested this specific location. He didn't know why, just felt drawn to it somehow. The tower looked brand new, though according to his paperwork, there had been a fire here last summer that destroyed the previous structure. Something about a lightning strike. Inside, everything was clean and orderly. New equipment hummed quietly, but in a drawer, Michael found something odd. An old journal, its cover scorched but the pages inside intact. The name inside read, Jackson Miller. Michael read through it, his unease growing. With each page, stories of time distortions, of shadows that moved wrong, of radio messages from the future. The final entry chilled him to the bone. They're not containing us. They're farming us. Towers like this one form a pattern across the entire planet. The Wendigos aren't the monsters. We are. We're just a stage, a cocoon state. They use us to talk to what's on the other side, and the other side is starting to answer. Michael closed the journal, his hands shaking. Through the window, he noticed someone standing at the edge of the forest. A tall man in a ranger uniform watching the tower. When Michael blinked, the man was gone. But the trees where he'd been standing seemed different somehow. Darker, like they opened onto somewhere else. And as the sun began to set, Michael could have sworn he heard his own voice calling from the radio, warning him about tomorrow. My name is Catherine Winters. I'm 39 years old, and I study sounds in nature. They call it acoustic ecology. I've always heard things differently than most people. Where others hear noise, I see patterns. It's like my brain turns sound into pictures. Only I can see. When I got the email about a research opportunity in Wyoming's Wind River Range, something felt familiar about it. The description mentioned unusual sound patterns in an isolated valley. I couldn't explain why, but I felt I needed to be there. I remember visiting Wyoming as a child, though the memories are fuzzy. Just flashes, really. Tall mountains, strange echoes, and a feeling that the sounds were trying to speak to me. My parents cut that vacation short. They never explained why. The grant offer came through unusual channels. My department chair called it academic serendipity, just the right funding appearing at just the right time for my research. Now I wonder if anything about this project was ever truly coincidental. Our team gathered at the Denver airport on a bright June morning. There were 4 of us, me, David Cruz, Abigail Morton, and our guide, Peter Whitecloud. David was all military precision with a tight haircut and perfect posture. He called himself an audio engineer, but I spotted equipment in his bag that no regular sound tech would carry. When I asked about his background, he mentioned consulting for defense projects before quickly changing the subject. Abigail was a geology graduate student with bright red hair and eyes that never quite focused on you. She had synesthesia. Her brain mixed up senses, so she saw sound waves as colors. I found her staring at airport announcements, watching patterns only she could see. Then there was Peter, tall, weathered face, with long black hair tied back neatly. He didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. His family had lived in these mountains for generations. My people were listeners, he told us during the drive. Some jobs passed down through blood. The valley wasn't on any tourist maps. We drove hours on increasingly rough roads until even those disappeared. The last hour was on foot, climbing a narrow path that twisted between towering rock walls. "We're almost there," Peter said, stopping suddenly. "Before we enter, you need to know the rules. Walk softly. Speak only when necessary. The valley hears everything." I laughed nervously. "You mean the acoustics are sensitive?" Peter didn't smile back. "The sound doesn't just bounce here, it stays." The path opened suddenly into a wide green valley that stretched for miles. Mountains surrounded us on all sides, their peaks cutting sharp lines against the blue sky. A perfect bowl of land, hidden from the world. "It feels so open," Abigail said. "That's the trick of it," Peter replied. "This is actually the most contained place you'll ever stand." Our base camp was an old ranger station about a mile into the valley. The outside looked abandoned, with faded paint and overgrown paths. Inside was different, clean, maintained with newer equipment than a remote Forest Service building should have. "Someone's been here recently," David said, examining the power system. In the back room, behind a locked door that Peter somehow had the key for, we found equipment I didn't recognize. Advanced recording devices, monitors showing waveform patterns, and maps of the valley with strange markings. "This isn't standard research gear," I said. David ran his hand over one machine. "Some of this is military grade." That first night I couldn't sleep. The silence was too complete, too heavy. Not the normal quiet of remote places with their insect sounds and rustling leaves. This silence felt like it was listening back. I set up my recording equipment near the station. Simple stuff at first, just baseline readings to compare against what we'd find deeper in the valley. The playback shocked me. "Guys, you need to hear this," I called the next morning. They gathered around as I played the recording. Clear as day, behind the normal night sounds, voices whispered. Not English, not any language I recognized, but something that seemed to borrow sounds from Spanish, David's native language, Arapaho, which Peter had spoken briefly, and even the Swedish my grandmother taught me as a child. "Equipment malfunction," David suggested, but I could see he didn't believe it. I shook my head. "The patterns match exactly what my theories predicted. This valley's acoustics are unlike anywhere else on Earth. It's like sound doesn't decay normally here. During breakfast, Peter pointed to marks carved in the cabin's wooden beams. My ancestors left messages about this place. They called it the Speaking Land and came here for vision quests. "What are these symbols?" I asked, tracing shapes that looked strangely like waveform patterns. "Stories say they represent the voices of the old ones," Peter said. "Beings who were here before people, who exist as sound rather than flesh." David rolled his eyes, but Abigail leaned closer. "They look like the patterns I see when I hear certain frequencies," she said quietly. Later that day, we hiked to a nearby cave entrance. The locals avoided it, according to Peter. They performed silence rituals before even approaching this part of the valley. "Superstition," David muttered. "Respect," Peter corrected. As we approached the cave mouth, I felt a strange pressure in my ears, like being underwater. The entrance was a perfect arch, almost too regular to be natural. "This doesn't look eroded," Abigail said, examining the stone. "It looks designed." Inside, the cave opened into a chamber with walls that curved in precise geometric patterns. The acoustics were impossible. A whisper at one end carried perfectly to specific points around the room, while being completely inaudible just inches away. "This can't form naturally," I said, running my hand along the smooth stone. David set up equipment, placing microphones at points I indicated. When we played back the first recordings, we all froze. The cave had added something to our voices. Behind every word we spoke, the playback contained other sounds. Fragments of conversations none of us had heard before, words in languages I didn't recognize, and beneath it all, a rhythmic pulsing that matched exactly the pattern of a human heartbeat. "Previous researchers," Abigail suggested. I checked the timestamps. "These additions are happening in real time, not recordings from before." That night, I found a metal box under a loose floorboard in my room. Inside were files stamped "Classified" and dated 1976. The top document referenced something called Sonic Entity Incursion and Operation Echo. Most pages were heavily redacted, but one photo remained intact, a team of researchers standing exactly where we had taken our group photo earlier that day. Their faces showed something between wonder and terror. A handwritten note was paper-clipped. To the back, "They're using our voices to come through." I couldn't sleep after that. Outside my window, the night was too quiet, not just silent, but empty, as if the world beyond the glass had ceased to exist. I put on headphones and played music to drown out the silence, but between every note, I began to hear whispers, words that sounded like my name, but not quite. Instructions I couldn't quite make out. Promises of knowledge beyond human understanding. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because dreams came. Vivid dreams of standing in the cave while the walls pulsed like a living throat. In the dream, David, Abigail, and Peter stood beside me, but they were changing, becoming transparent while their voices became somehow solid, visible in the air as complex geometric patterns. I woke to find them all in the kitchen, looking as tired as I felt. "Did anyone else have strange dreams?" Abigail asked quietly. We all had the same dream. Something was happening to us in this valley. Something was changing in our minds, and somewhere just at the edge of hearing, something was trying to speak through us. On our 5th day, David's satellite phone rang, the only reliable communication we had with the outside world. He took the call outside, but through the window I could see his face hardening into the soldier he tried to hide. He returned pale and tense. "That was my contact at DARPA," he said, finally admitting his military connections. "They wanted a status update on Operation Echo." "What exactly is Operation Echo?" I demanded. David looked conflicted. "I wasn't supposed to tell you. This isn't just research. The government has been monitoring this valley since the 1970s when a mining team disappeared." "Disappeared?" Abigail's voice shook. 7 men. They reported hearing voices, then strange phenomena. Their last transmission mentioned figures that weren't quite solid coming through the rock walls. When rescue teams arrived, they found equipment running but no people, not even bodies. I showed them the files I'd found. Together with David's information, a disturbing picture emerged. The government had sent team after team, each one getting closer to establishing what they called cross-dimensional communication before going missing. We're not just researchers, I realized. We're test subjects. Why ours specifically? Abigail asked. Peter spoke up. Because you're the ones who can hear them. Like my ancestors could. He pointed to his ears. Some people are born with the right kind of hearing. My family has served as listeners for generations. That afternoon we ventured deeper into the cave system, the passages twisted in patterns that seemed to follow mathematical formulas rather than natural erosion. Every surface was covered in those same wave-like symbols. These markings are a language, I realized, comparing them to the acoustic patterns on my equipment. Their sound given physical form. In the deepest chamber we found something impossible. A perfectly spherical room with walls that seemed to vibrate slightly, even in complete stillness. At the center stood a formation like a crystal microphone pointing upward. Don't touch it, Peter warned, but David was already reaching out. The moment his fingers contacted the crystal, every surface in the chamber lit up with blue-white light, revealing thousands of symbols carved into the stone. The air filled with a low hum that made my teeth ache. It's activating, Peter whispered. On my recording equipment, the sound levels spiked beyond anything the machines could measure. But the strange thing was, to our ears, the sound seemed almost quiet, as if most of it existed in frequencies we couldn't consciously perceive. That night, the changes began in earnest. Abigail woke us, screaming. When we reached her room, she sat in the corner, hands over her ears. Make it stop, she begged. The colors are too loud. Her synesthesia was intensifying. Sound wasn't just creating visual patterns anymore. It was overwhelming her senses completely. David started hearing phantom radio chatter, voices speaking in military code that only he could hear. He'd stop mid-sentence, head tilted like he was listening to earbuds that weren't there. For me, the patterns became clearer. I could suddenly understand the relationship between sound waves and physical reality in ways that went beyond science. I started drawing equations that connected acoustic frequencies to molecular vibrations, to brain waves, to the very fabric of space-time. Only Peter seemed unchanged, watching us with knowing eyes. What's happening to us? I demanded. You're beginning to hear what's always been there, he said simply. The dogmen are reaching through. Dogmen. That's just a translation. My people's word for them describes beings who hunt with sound, who exist primarily as patterns rather than bodies. They've been trying to communicate since before humans existed. I found myself drawn back to the caves every day, recording and analyzing. The data showed something extraordinary. Sound waves in the chamber remained present indefinitely, never diminishing in strength as they should according to all known physics. More disturbing, certain frequencies caused visible changes. In solid matter, when I generated a specific tone, my hand became partially transparent. For a brief moment, I could see the bone structure beneath my skin. In the ranger station's hidden room, I discovered records from previous expeditions. One physicist had written, "Sound appears to be the primary reality here, with matter as its byproduct rather than the reverse." David's military contacts stopped responding to calls. The satellite phone picked up only static, but within that static, we all heard voices calling our names. One morning, Abigail rushed into the common room, eyes wild with excitement rather than fear. "I understand now," she said. "Human speech is just a simplified version of their language. We evolved it as an attempt to mimic them." "Mimic who?" I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. "The beings who existed before matter. The ones who live in the patterns. She grabbed my recorder, playing back a section of cave audio. Listen between the sounds. That's where they live. I heard nothing unusual, but David's face went white. I hear them, he whispered, clear as day. That night I woke to find Peter standing by my bed. It's time, he said. They're ready to meet you properly. Half asleep, I followed him to the cave. David and Abigail were already there, sitting cross-legged before the crystal formation. Their eyes reflected the faint blue light pulsing from the walls. What's happening? I asked, suddenly afraid. The convergence, Peter said. Every few decades the conditions are right. Sound and matter can intermingle. As he spoke, the humming grew louder. The crystal formation began to rotate slowly, though nothing was touching it. The symbols on the walls seemed to float outward, hanging in the air like luminous smoke. Your military friends weren't trying to stop this, Peter told David. They were trying to control it, to weaponize the crossing between states of being. The air in the center of the room began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Within that distortion, shapes moved, not quite solid, not quite sound, but something in between. Don't be afraid, Peter said. They've been waiting a very long time to speak with people who can truly hear them. The shimmering air coalesced into figures that hurt to look at directly. They weren't exactly human in shape, more like vertical columns of vibrating particles that constantly shifted and flowed. Where faces might be, complex patterns pulsed and changed. I felt rather than heard their voices, vibrations that bypassed my ears and resonated directly in my skull. They've been here all along, Peter explained calmly, existing in frequencies we normally can't perceive. Human ears evolved to filter them out, a protective mechanism. David backed away, military training giving way to primal fear. What do they want? To complete what began millennia ago, Peter said. His voice had changed, gaining harmonic overtones that no human throat should produce. As he spoke, his outline blurred slightly, as if he wasn't entirely solid anymore. You're one of them, I whispered. I'm in between, Peter corrected. My family line has served as translators for generations. Each of us moves a little further along the spectrum. The entities, the dogmen as Peter called them, moved closer. One reached toward Abigail, its limb passing partially through her shoulder. She gasped, but not in pain. I can see it all, she breathed. Sound is the foundation. Matter is just frozen vibration. Information flooded my mind, not in words, but in pure understanding. I suddenly knew that these beings existed primarily as wave patterns, with only temporary material manifestations. They experienced time differently, perceiving past, present, and future as variations in frequency rather than linear progression. The previous research team, I realized, they didn't disappear. They transformed. Peter nodded. They chose to complete the change, to exist as both matter and sound. David's military implant, a small device behind his ear that he'd claimed was a hearing aid, suddenly activated, broadcasting our thoughts as audible sound. Our private fears and fascinations echoed through the chamber. The military knows, David admitted as his secrets spilled into the air. They've been studying this phenomenon since they discovered it accidentally during sonic weapons testing. They want to use it, the ability to transition between physical and wave states. One of the entities moved to the center of the room. Through some mechanism I couldn't understand, it manipulated the crystal formation, creating a projection on the cave wall. Images from human history showing ancient people performing sonic rituals in this very valley. They've been guiding our evolution, Peter explained. Human speech itself is a gift from them, or perhaps a parasite, depending on your perspective. A mechanism to gradually prepare our consciousness for transformation. The entity communicated directly to my mind. Our modern electronic communications network was creating perfect conditions for a broader dimensional merger. Cell phones, radio, waves, internet signals, all were thinning the barrier between our world of matter and their world of pure pattern. What happens if this merger completes? I asked. The answer came in a flood of images. Humans developing the ability to exist as both physical beings and conscious wave patterns, transcending the limitations of bodies, experiencing reality as these entities did. Freedom, Abigail whispered, already half transformed. Her body had become partially transparent, while her voice created visible patterns in the air. David wasn't handling it as well. The soldier in him saw threats, invasion scenarios. This is a security risk beyond anything imaginable, he said, backing toward the exit. If people could transition between states, become invisible, move through solid matter. You're still thinking in terms of weapons, Peter said sadly. This is evolution. The crystal suddenly pulsed brighter, and the dimensional boundary thinned further. More entities flowed into our reality, dozens, then hundreds of shimmering, sound-based life forms filling the chamber. Panic hit me. Whatever was happening was accelerating beyond control. The entities weren't just observing anymore. They were actively changing the environment, altering the acoustic properties of the air itself. They're not attacking, Peter assured us. This is communication, not invasion. The disruption you feel is just the difference between our realities. But something was wrong. The entities seemed agitated, their patterns becoming chaotic. The crystal formation vibrated violently. What's happening? I shouted over the growing noise. Peter's face showed concern for the first time. Too much, too fast. The boundary is collapsing instead of merging gradually. David pulled something from his pocket, a small device with a blinking red light. Insurance policy, he said grimly. If things went south, I was supposed to activate. It generates a counter-frequency. Don't, Peter lunged for him, but too late. The device emitted a high-pitched tone that made my ears bleed. The entities recoiled, their forms destabilizing. The crystal shattered, sending fragments flying across the chamber. The cave began to shake, rocks falling from the ceiling. The boundary between dimensions was tearing rather than merging. What have you done? Peter's voice distorted as his form flickered between solid and wave-like. Protecting humanity, David shouted over the chaos. Abigail collapsed, her transformation interrupted halfway. She writhed on the ground, caught between states of being. I spotted symbols on the wall that matched patterns in the old files. The frequency the indigenous people had used to maintain the boundary safely. Without thinking, I began to hum the pattern, feeling the vibrations rebuild the dimensional wall. Peter joined me, his voice amplifying mine. Together, we created a sound that stabilized the tearing reality. The entities began to retreat, flowing back through the narrowing gap between worlds. One remained facing me directly. Through our connection, I understood its final message. This is only delayed, not prevented. The merger is inevitable. Sound came before matter. It will remain after. You have the choice to evolve or fade away. Then, it too was gone, leaving only the four of us in a half-collapsed cave filled with broken equipment and shattered crystal. Abigail recovered slowly, though something about her remained changed. Her eyes saw beyond normal human perception now. David was silent, his military certainty broken by what he'd witnessed. As we made our way back to the ranger station, I knew we faced an impossible choice: report what we'd found and risk the military, attempting to weaponize interdimensional travel, or keep the secret and leave humanity unprepared for the inevitable merger of realities. What will you tell them? Peter asked as we packed our equipment. I looked at my recordings, the only evidence of what we'd experienced. The truth, but not all of it. Enough to make sure no one comes here unprepared, but not enough to let them weaponize it. They'll send others, David warned. Different specialists, better equipment, and those people will face the same choice. We did, I replied. 1 year later, I sit in my university office listening to the final recordings from that cave. I've changed since Wyoming. I hear things differently now. Cell phone conversations, radio signals, the endless chatter of electronic devices. Sometimes, between the sounds of everyday life, I catch fragments of familiar patterns. The dogmen are still there, still waiting. The boundary between our worlds grows thinner with each new wireless technology we create. In quiet moments, I can feel the transformation continuing inside me. My dreams are filled with sound patterns that reshape reality. Sometimes I wake to find myself partly transparent, vibrating at frequencies just beyond normal human perception. I've sent copies of my research to trusted colleagues, time-locked files that will open if something happens to me. They contain what I've learned since returning, that consciousness itself is a wave pattern that can exist independent of physical form, that the static between radio stations sometimes contains voices speaking a language older than humanity, that reality itself is just a complex interference pattern in an ocean of sound. I've come to understand that what we experienced wasn't an invasion or a communication attempt gone wrong. It was a homecoming invitation. Humanity began as sound and will return to it eventually. As I speak these final notes into my recorder, I can feel the change accelerating. My voice creates visible patterns in the air now. My fingers sometimes pass through solid objects when I'm not concentrating. To whoever finds these recordings, understand that what you're hearing isn't just information. The sound waves themselves contain the pattern, the key to transformation. And by listening, you've already begun to change. End of recording. The young acoustic researcher set down the headphones, hands trembling slightly. Outside her window, the university campus was alive with students talking on cell phones, music playing from speakers, 1,000 electronic signals crossing invisibly through the air. For a moment, she thought she saw patterns in the space between people, shimmering vertical forms that moved with purpose. When she looked directly at them, they vanished, but in her ears, the whispers remained. And when she spoke, her voice seemed to hang in the air just a fraction too long, as if reluctant to fade away. My name is Frank Thornton. I'm 52 years old and used to be a park ranger up here in northern Minnesota. That was before I found out what the government was really doing in these woods, before I understood what was happening beneath the ice. It's the winter of 1979, and I just bought this old hunting lodge on Lake Midnight. Most people thought I was crazy to sink my life savings into a place so remote, especially with the oil crisis making heating costs sky high. But I didn't tell anyone the real reason. This place sits at the exact coordinates written in a classified file I smuggled out when I left the Ranger Service, a file about something called Project Permafrost. The lodge is nothing special to look at. 2 stories of weathered logs perched on the edge of a frozen lake, miles from the nearest town. But it's what's underneath that matters. Ancient ice caves run deep below the lake, and according to those files, they're not just caves. My son Michael arrived yesterday. He's 28 now, all grown up, but there's something strange about him being here. He's never visited this place before. I only bought it 3 months ago, but he keeps saying things feel familiar. Dad, he said this morning while staring out at the lake. I've dreamed about this place. The way the shoreline curves there, the 3 pine trees clustered on that point. How is that possible? I didn't have an answer, not one I wanted to share anyway. Harold Lundgren, the caretaker who came with the property, just grunted when I asked if kids used to visit here. Harold's in his 70s, with a leathery face that never seems bothered by the cold. He works, outside without gloves, even when it's 20 below. I've seen him break ice on the water pump with bare hands, not even flinching. Cold doesn't bother some people, he told me once, with a look that made me think he knew more than he was saying. We also have guests staying here, the Petersons. John and Martha claim they're just up for winter fishing, but I've caught John wandering around at night, checking the foundations of the lodge. Martha watches all of us during meals, taking mental notes. They're not tourists. My years as a ranger taught me to spot government observers. The storm hit 3 days ago. The radio says it's the worst blizzard in 50 years. We're completely cut off now, phone lines down, roads buried under 6 feet of snow. But there's something wrong about this storm. The snowflakes fall in perfect geometric patterns. I collected some on black paper and studied them with my old magnifying glass. Snowflakes are supposed to be random, but these have identical structures, like they were manufactured. Last night, I finally got into the records the previous owner left behind. Lodge guest books going back to the 1930s, the same family names keep showing up decade after decade. Peterson, Lundgren, Thornton, my family name. But I've never been here before. At least, I don't think I have. I confronted Harold about it this morning. You know something about this place, I said, showing him the guest books. My father's name is in here from 1952. He never mentioned coming to Minnesota. Harold's eyes got that faraway look. The government ran programs up here in the 50s and 60s, cold adaptation studies they called it, testing how humans might survive extreme temperatures. Like the experiments you were part of, I asked. His eyes snapped to mine. Who told you? That? The files, Harold. I worked for them too, remember? Harold rubbed his hands together, though the cabin was plenty warm. They were trying to change us, Frank. Create men who could survive in conditions no human should. They said it was for Arctic exploration, then for space travel. But it was really about the Cold War. They wanted soldiers who could fight in nuclear winter. I didn't tell Harold that my hands haven't felt cold since I arrived, or that the frostbite, scars I got 20 years ago, have started to fade. Something is happening to my body, and it's accelerating. Michael found the cameras yesterday, hidden in trees around the property, weatherproof, and running on what looked like special long-term batteries. Some look decades old, but still operational. Others are newer. Someone's been watching this place for years, Dad, he said, showing me one he'd removed. Why? I didn't have the heart to tell him we were probably the ones being watched right now. That night, I woke to the sound of ice cracking. Not the normal sounds a frozen lake makes, but rhythmic, like communication. Through my bedroom window, I could see the lake surface glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed in patterns. The ice was moving in impossible ways, forming and reforming into shapes that reminded me of DNA strands. I've never told anyone about what I saw during my last year as a ranger. The bodies we found frozen in the ice, researchers from a government team. They weren't dead, not exactly. Their eyes moved, tracking us. Their skin had turned a pale blue, and ice crystals formed patterns across their faces. When we pulled them out, they shattered like glass. The report called it a tragic accident. But I found the real files. They had succeeded in their experiment. Those men had adapted to the cold in ways that made them no longer human. That's when I took the files and ran. And now, 20 years later, I've brought my son to the very place it all started. God help me. What have I done? This morning, Michael ventured out onto the lake. The temperature was 30 below, deadly cold, but he wore just a light jacket. When he came back 3 hours later, his cheeks weren't even red. It's beautiful out there, Dad, he said, not even shivering. I can hear the ice singing. The Petersons watched him from the window, Martha making notes in a small book she quickly hid when I walked in. I need to find out what's in the boathouse. Harold keeps it locked, says it's unsafe with all the old equipment. But I've seen lights down there at night. Tomorrow I'm breaking in, storm or no storm. Something is happening to all of us. The nightmares started last night, visions of blue-skinned figures moving under the ice, calling to me. In the dreams, I answer by breaking through the frozen surface and diving in. But the water doesn't feel cold. It feels like coming home. I don't have much time left. If anyone finds this journal, know that what's happening here isn't just about us. It's about what humanity might become when the world grows cold again. And God help me, part of me wants to see it happen. I broke into the boathouse at dawn. The lock was frozen solid, but a good whack with my axe took care of that. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Just fishing gear and old boat parts covered in dust. But the floor didn't make sense. A boathouse should have a trapdoor, or a ramp to lower boats into the water. This one had solid concrete. When I tapped the floor with the axe handle, certain spots sounded hollow. It took me an hour of searching, but I finally found a hidden latch underneath an old workbench. It opened to a narrow staircase going straight down into darkness. The government bunker from my files. I grabbed my flashlight and went down. The stairs seemed to go on forever, the air getting colder with each step. At the bottom was a metal door with faded letters. Project Permafrost, authorized personnel only. The door wasn't locked. Inside was a room filled with old equipment. Machines that looked like refrigerators, but with tubes and dials all over them. Charts on the walls showed human bodies with blue markings where something was changing inside them. In one corner stood 5 metal chambers big enough to hold people, with thick glass windows and frost coating the insides. Freezers for people. That's what they were. I found a file cabinet that wasn't completely rusted shut. Inside were records of subjects, people who had been brought here for testing. Most of the names were blacked out, but I recognized some. Lundgren, Peterson, and there it was. Thornton, my father's name, from 1952. And under offspring monitoring was my name along with Michael's. We weren't just random people. We were part of this experiment all along. The blizzard outside got worse. Snow piled up past the first floor windows, but it wasn't falling naturally. I stood watching it for hours. The flakes moved like they had a mind of their own, building perfect 6-sided shapes against the glass. Some of the patterns reminded me of the markings on those charts downstairs. Harold found me later that day as I was coming back from the boathouse. "You went down there, didn't you?" he asked. His face looked tired, older somehow. I didn't deny it. "What did they do to us, Harold?" He looked out at the storm. They were trying to save humanity in their own twisted way. The government knew, something back in the 50s, that the climate might change, get much colder. They needed people who could survive it. By turning us into what? Those things I saw frozen in the ice years ago? Harold's eyes met mine. They found something in those caves beneath the lake. Something old. The native people here had stories about the Wendigo, humans who changed during long winters, adapted to the cold in ways that made them something else. The government didn't make this up, Frank. They found it, and they tried to control it. The biological antifreeze, I said, remembering a term from the files. Harold nodded. Human bodies make a kind of antifreeze naturally, but only in small amounts. The experiments pushed it further, changed our bodies to produce more. Some subjects went too far. Some didn't go far enough. "And which were you?" I asked. He held out his hand. A small cut on his palm oozed fluid that was thick and clear, not red like blood should be. Somewhere in between. Not human anymore, but not fully changed either. I thought about Michael out on the lake, not even feeling the cold. About my own hands that hadn't felt cold in days. We were changing too. That night, I hiked out through the snow to check the perimeter of the property. The storm had let up just enough to see. What I found scared me more than anything in that bunker. Every 100 yards or so stood a metal pole buried deep in the snow. Each one had a small box attached with blinking lights. The whole lodge property was surrounded by them, forming a perfect circle with us at the center. Some looked new. Others were so old and rusted they must have been there for decades. They were monitoring us, or containing us. On my way back, I saw something that couldn't be real. Michael was standing on the frozen lake, barefoot in the snow, his arms stretched wide. The temperature was 40 below zero, cold enough to kill in minutes. He should have been dead. Instead, he was smiling. "Dad!" he called when he saw me. "I can feel it now. The ice is alive." I ran to him, ready to drag him back to the lodge, but stopped short. His feet weren't just bare. They were blue-tinged, and where they touched the ice, small crystals formed in patterns up his ankles. "Michael," I said carefully, "how long have you been out here?" "Hours, maybe all day." He didn't even sound cold. "Dad, I remember now. I've been here before. We all have. I got him to come back to the lodge, but he moved like he was in a trance." Inside, the Petersons watched us with knowing eyes. Martha's stomach had grown bigger overnight, impossibly bigger. She was pregnant, but she hadn't been showing at all when they arrived just days ago. "It's happening faster this cycle, John," Peterson said quietly as I helped Michael to his room. "The cold is speeding things up. I found more answers that night in the old indigenous artifacts stored in the lodge's basement. The previous owner had collected items from the local tribes, carvings, paintings, tools. One hide painting showed blue figures emerging from the ice while normal humans watched in fear. Another showed the same blue figures helping humans survive in a world covered in snow. The Wendigo weren't monsters in these images. They were saviors. There was a journal too, written by a tribal elder in the 1920s. He wrote about the people who sleep in the cold, beings who hibernated for generations under the ice, waking only when needed. They weren't evil spirits who ate human flesh like in the popular stories. They were humans who had changed to survive extreme cold, the last ice age. And they passed that ability down through their bloodlines, mostly dormant until needed again. The government hadn't created anything new. They had found these dormant genes and tried to wake them up. Michael came into the basement while I was reading. His skin had a blue tint to it now, not just on his feet. "I can hear them under the ice, Dad," he said. "Our ancestors. They're waking up because they know what's coming." "What's coming, Michael?" "The long winter. It's started already. The signs are all there. Haven't you felt it? This isn't just a cold snap or a bad decade. The Earth is cooling again. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he was just experiencing side effects from whatever had been done to us. But part of me knew he was right. I'd seen the climate reports that the government kept classified, the real reason behind Project Permafrost. They weren't just preparing for nuclear winter. They were preparing for a natural catastrophe they saw coming decades ago, and now it was here. Strange things started happening in the lodge as temperatures dropped even further. Water froze in perfect geometric patterns in the glasses. Ice formed inside the rooms, growing from the corners in crystalline structures that looked like tiny cities. Time seemed to move differently, sometimes fast, sometimes incredibly slow. Harold explained it one morning as we watched ice crystals form on the inside of the windows. Cold changes physics at the quantum level. Particles slow down. Information transfers differently. That's why some cold-adapted people report seeing things before they happen. Time itself moves differently when you're that cold. "That doesn't make sense," I argued. But even as I said it, I knew he was right. I'd been having flashes of things before they happened. Seeing Michael walk through a doorway seconds before he actually did, knowing the pattern ice would form. On a window before it appeared. I took my temperature that afternoon. The thermometer read 82 degrees. A normal human would be dead or at least unconscious at that temperature. I felt fine. Better than fine. I felt aware in a way I never had before. In the evening, we all gathered in the main room of the lodge. No one had made plans to meet, but somehow we all arrived at exactly the same moment. Martha Peterson's belly was huge now, like she was about to give birth any moment. Harold's skin had a blue tint similar to Michael's. John Peterson watched us all with clinical interest, taking notes in a small book. "It's the solstice tonight," Harold said. "The longest night. The turning point." None of us needed to ask what he meant. We could all feel it, something building beneath the ice, a pressure that had been growing for days. The real reason we were all here. I tried one last time to make sense of it all. This was all planned, wasn't it? Bringing us all here at this specific time. John Peterson finally spoke up. Project Permafrost was never just about creating cold-adapted operatives, Frank. It was about saving a specific genetic line. People whose ancestors survived the last ice age by changing. People like your family, Harold's family, my wife's family. "You've been watching us for generations," I said. He nodded. "Guiding marriages, tracking bloodlines, setting up situations to test for the traits. Some families showed more potential than others. Yours was one of the strongest." "So what happens now?" I asked. Before he could answer, the ice on the lake made a sound like thunder. The whole lodge shook. Outside, through the frosted windows, blue light pulsed from beneath the frozen surface. "Now," said Michael, his voice somehow deeper, resonating in a way that made the ice on the windows vibrate, "we meet the ones who came before us." Martha Peterson gasped and clutched her belly. "It's time," she said. "The child is coming." As the solstice night grew darker outside, we all knew our normal lives were over. Whatever we had been before, we were changing into something else now, something meant to survive what was coming, and part of me was terrified. But another part, a growing part, welcomed it. Martha's labor was quick, too quick to be normal. Harold and John took her to the master bedroom, while Michael and I stayed in the main room, watching the strange blue light pulse through the ice outside. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say when your whole understanding of the world was crumbling? Less than an hour later, we heard a baby cry, but the sound wasn't right. It was musical, like ice crystals chiming against each other. John came, out of the bedroom, his face pale. "It's a girl," he said. "You should see her." We followed him into the room. Martha lay in bed, looking exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a baby, unlike any I'd ever seen. The child's skin was pale blue, like the sky on a winter morning. Her eyes, when she opened them, were clear as ice, with patterns like snowflakes in the irises. Most shocking of all, the room temperature had dropped dramatically around her. Frost formed on the blankets where she lay. "She's perfect," Martha whispered. "The first of the new generation, born ready for what's coming." I backed away, bumping into Harold. "This is wrong," I said. "Whatever's happening to us isn't natural." Harold put his hand on my shoulder. His skin was cold as ice. "What's natural, Frank? Humans have always adapted to survive. The Wendigo transformation isn't a curse. It's evolution." There was that word again. Wendigo. Not the monster from campfire stories, but something real. Humans changed by extreme cold into something that could survive it. "What's her name?" Michael asked, stepping closer to the baby. The child reached up and touched his blue-tinged cheek, leaving a small pattern of frost where her fingers had been. "Winter," Martha said. "Her name is Winter." That night, while everyone else slept, I went to the lake. The blue light beneath the ice was brighter now, pulsing in a way that seemed to call to me personally. I walked out onto the frozen surface, no longer feeling the bitter cold that would have killed a normal person. In the center of the lake, the ice had formed a perfect circle, thinner than the surrounding area. I knelt and brushed away the snow. Below, shapes moved in the depths, human-like but different, taller, sleeker, with skin that reflected the blue light. They moved with impossible grace in the freezing water. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt a strange calm. These beings weren't aliens or monsters. They were us, or what we could become. Humans adapted to a world of ice. As I watched, one looked up directly at me. Its eyes were like the baby's, clear as crystal with snowflake patterns. It pressed a hand against the underside of the ice, directly beneath mine. The ice between us thinned until it was barely there at all. A voice filled my head, not spoken, but somehow transmitted through the ice itself. The time has come, Frank Thornton. The cycle returns. The ice grows. Will you join us? I pulled my hand back and stumbled away. Back at the lodge, I locked myself in my room and took my temperature again. 78 degrees now. Hypothermia so severe I should be dead. But my mind was clearer than ever. In the mirror, my eyes had begun to change, the brown giving way to clear blue with small crystalline patterns forming. The next morning, the transformation accelerated throughout the lodge. Indoor temperatures plummeted, but none of us felt cold anymore. Ice formed on the walls in beautiful, complex patterns that moved and shifted like living art. When I touched them, I could feel information flowing into my mind, memories that weren't mine, knowledge I'd never learned. Michael's transformation was most advanced. His skin was fully blue now, his eyes completely changed. When he spoke, his breath came out as crystalline mist that hung in the air, forming words and images. "They've been hibernating down there for decades, Dad," he explained, "some for centuries, waiting for the right conditions to return." "What do they want?" I asked. "To help us survive what's coming. The Earth's climate moves in cycles. The warm period is ending. A new ice age is beginning, slowly but surely. They've lived through this before." The Petersons gathered their things, preparing to leave with their newborn child, who radiated cold so intense it froze the air around her. John finally explained their true purpose. "We're observers, yes, but also participants. Martha carries the genes too. Our daughter is proof that the transformation can happen from birth, not just through gradual adaptation. She'll be studied, protected." "You're taking her to the government?" I asked, suddenly afraid for the child. John smiled sadly. "Not exactly. The government answers to us now, Frank. Project Permafrost outgrew its military origins decades ago. We're preparing humanity for survival, not war." He handed me a thick folder. "Your new assignment, if you choose to accept it. There are others, like you across the Northern Hemisphere, people with the right genetic makeup. They need guidance as the change begins." I didn't take the folder. "And if I refuse, then stay here. Join those beneath the ice. The choice has always been yours." As the Petersons prepared to leave with their strange, beautiful child, Harold took me down to the boathouse again. This time, he opened a different hidden door, one I hadn't found before. It led down to an enormous cave beneath the lake, the walls glowing with the same blue light I'd seen through the ice. The cave was filled with technology, some modern, some so advanced it seemed alien. Monitoring equipment, medical devices, and what looked like hibernation chambers built into the ice walls themselves. "The government didn't build this," I said, understanding at last. "They found it." Harold nodded. "The Wendigo, the adapted, ones have been preparing for thousands of years. They knew the cycle would come again. The cold always returns." In the center of the cave was a pool of water, unfrozen despite the freezing temperatures. From this pool rose steam that crystallized in the air, forming patterns that seemed to tell a story. "The previous owner didn't disappear," Harold said, pointing to one of the hibernation chambers built into the wall. Inside was a man, perfectly preserved, his skin the same blue as Michael's had become. He changed and went into hibernation, waiting for the right time. And that time is now? Why? Because the baby was born, because you and Michael came here, because the ice is growing again across the world, though most don't see it yet. As if responding to his words, the pool bubbled. From it emerged a figure, humanoid but taller, its blue skin adorned with frost patterns that seemed to tell a story. It moved with liquid grace, water freezing instantly as it stepped onto the cave floor. It spoke, not with a voice, but with thoughts that formed directly in my mind. "Frank Thornton, you carry the old blood, the ice blood. Your line was strong enough to survive the last great freeze. It will survive the next." "Who are you?" I asked, surprised by my lack of fear. "I am what humans become when the long winter comes. I am what your son is becoming, what you are becoming. We have many names. Wendigo is but one. We are the caretakers of human knowledge during the ice times." It gestured, and the frost patterns on the wall shifted to show scenes of a world covered in snow, with blue figures helping normal humans build shelters, find food, survive. The cycle is beginning again. The warm time ends. The ice returns. It will take generations, but those who can adapt must prepare the way. "Why me?" I asked. "Your family carries the strongest markers. For generations we have watched, guided, waited. Now you must choose. Become like us and help lead humanity through the change, or remain as you are and die when the cold deepens." I returned to the lodge to find Michael standing outside in the blizzard, his arms raised to the sky. The snow parted around him, forming a perfect circle of calm in the storm. "I understand now, Dad," he said when he saw me. "This is what I was meant for, why I had those dreams about this place. My whole life I've been preparing for this moment." I looked at my son, no longer fully human but not a monster either. Something adapted, evolved to survive what was coming. "There's a government team coming," I told him. "John radioed them before they left. They'll be here by morning." "To study us or stop us?" Michael asked. "I don't know, but we have to decide what to do before they arrive." As night fell, the transformation accelerated. The Wendigo beneath the lake emerged through the ice, rising up like silent blue ghosts. They glided across the frozen surface toward the lodge, dozens of them, their crystalline eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Inside, the lodge itself began to change. Ice formed patterns on every surface, not destroying but transforming, strengthening the wood, sealing cracks, creating a perfect insulation against the bitter cold that even normal humans could survive in. I had a choice to make. I could try to destroy the evidence of the program, try to stop what was happening, or I could embrace it as a natural evolution, a way for humanity to survive the coming cold. My transformation was less advanced than Michael's, but I could feel the ice in my veins now, the strange clarity it brought to my thoughts. I understood why the government had been monitoring these changes for generations. This wasn't just about creating cold-resistant operatives. It was about ensuring human survival when the climate shifted again. The government team arrived at dawn, 12 men in heavy winter gear, armed but nervous. Their leader, a woman I recognized from my ranger days named Dr. Collins, approached me where I waited on the porch. "Frank Thornton," she said, her breath fogging in the extreme cold. "You're looking, well, considering your core temperature must be about 75 degrees by now." "You knew this would happen," I said. "You've been preparing for it." She nodded. Project Permafrost was never just a military program, it was a survival plan. Earth's climate is changing, cooling in ways our models didn't predict. We need people who can survive it, lead others through it. "And the Wendigo? The ones under the ice?" "Our predecessors, humans who adapted during the last ice age. They've been guiding us, sharing technology, helping us prepare." She looked toward the lake where the blue figures now stood openly on the ice. "They're not our enemies, Frank. They're our future." Michael came outside, fully transformed now, blue-skinned, eyes like crystal, frost patterns swirling across his skin. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Dr. Collins waved them down. "The child?" she asked. "The Petersons took her. First of the new generation." She nodded. "There will be more. The transformation is spreading naturally now in areas where temperatures have been dropping. Northern communities are reporting changes. What happens now? I asked. Now you have a choice. Come with us, help us prepare others for the change. Or stay here, join those beneath the ice in hibernation until the world needs you. 1 year later, I sit in a government facility in Washington, D.C., watching monitors that track global temperatures. The cooling continues, subtle enough that most people haven't noticed yet, but accelerating. Political tensions rise as crops fail in northern regions, as energy demands for heating skyrocket. My transformation has stabilized. I look human enough to pass in society, though I haven't felt truly warm in a year. My eyes, now clear blue with crystalline patterns, are hidden behind special contacts. Michael chose a different path. He went beneath the ice with the others into hibernation, waiting for the time when they'll be needed. The document before me is marked Permafrost Protocol, Global Implementation. It outlines how we'll identify and guide those with the right genetic markers through the transformation as temperatures continue to fall, how we'll preserve human knowledge and technology through what's coming. Dr. Collins, now Secretary Collins since the crisis cabinet formed, looks at me from across the table. The President needs to know if this is truly necessary, she says, activating sleeper subjects worldwide, revealing the existence of the adapted ones. It's a massive step. I point to the temperature graph on the wall. The line trends downward, steeper each month. We don't have a choice. The ice is returning. Better to change and survive than remain the same and perish. As I speak, I feel the cold clarity that comes with the transformation. The ice doesn't lie, it preserves, it remembers, and soon it will cover much of the world again. The next ice age has begun, and humanity will need to change to survive it, just as we did before, just as we always have. I sign the authorization to activate the Permafrost Protocol worldwide, my blue-tinged fingers leaving a faint trace of frost on the paper. Winter is coming, the long winter, and we will be ready. Epilogue. Dr. Amara Chen, climate researcher, shivers as she reads the journal recovered from an abandoned government facility. Outside her window, snow falls in Washington, D.C. in July, the third year in a row with no true summer. The journal is dated 1980, written by someone named Frank Thornton. It details transformations, beings beneath the ice, a government program called Permafrost. She had dismissed it as fiction until she found the classified files that confirmed every word. As she reads the final entry, she notices her breath fogging in the air of her heated office. Her fingers, holding the page, have a faint blue tinge she hadn't noticed before. Outside, the snow falls in perfect geometric patterns, and somewhere beneath the ice, the adapted ones are waking. The long winter has returned. My name is Emmanuel Washington. I'm 58 years old, and I've been running from the water for most of my life. Funny thing is, I'm back where it all started. A little cabin on stilts in the Louisiana Bayou, a place where the water is always watching. I wasn't always afraid of the water. Hell, I used to love it. The Navy saw that in me back in '45. They picked me special for their underwater program, one of the first black frogmen. That's what they called us when we did those secret dives nobody was supposed to know about. Operation Deep Evolution, they named it. Sounded important then, sounds like a warning now. The cabin creaks above the dark water as I write this. It belonged to my grandparents, built right where the old folks say something ancient sleeps below. My daughter Josephine is here with me now, and her boy Marcus too. She came running back home after that no-good husband of hers raised his hands one too many times. He's got friends in the police department, so coming here was the only way to keep her safe. At least, that's what I thought. Grandpa, the water's talking again, Marcus says from the porch. He's only 10, but sees things in the bayou that make my skin crawl. It's just the wind moving the water, boy, I tell him. But I know it's a lie. I feel the itching on my neck again. right where the skin has been getting rough and scaly. The medicine I mix from those special minerals isn't working as well anymore. The change is coming faster now. I hide it with high collars and tell Josephine, it's just a rash from the bayou heat. Last night I woke up gasping. In my dream, I was back in that underwater chamber from 45, watching my teammates pound on the hatch I had sealed to save myself, their eyes wide with betrayal as bubbles escaped their mouths. When I woke, my pillow was soaking wet, but not with sweat. Somehow my bed was dry, but everything on it was drenched like I'd been underwater all night. The family Bible sits heavy on my table. Inside are those strange waterproof pages my ancestors kept adding to, warning about returning to the deep. I used to think it was just spiritual talk. Now I know better. "Daddy, you need to see this," Josephine calls from outside. Her voice sounds worried. I join her on the rickety dock. She's holding something that gleams in the sunlight, a small golden object shaped like nothing I've ever seen, perfect condition like it was made yesterday. "Marcus found it," she says. "It just floated up to him." The boy stands there, water dripping from his shorts, a strange calm in his eyes. "It wanted me to have it," he says simply. That night I check on him while he sleeps. His breathing is slow, too slow. I count the seconds between each breath. 1 minute passes, then 2. Any normal person would be dead, but Marcus just sleeps peacefully. I place my hand near his mouth and feel nothing. Then he suddenly gasps, water trickling from the corner of his mouth, though he hasn't been near the bayou for hours. I go to my room and pull up the loose floorboard where I keep the old Navy files I stole before my discharge. The paper's marked aquatic psychological aberration. That's what they called my condition. The map coordinates in the file match our cabin's location exactly. That can't be a coincidence. The locals in town have always treated us Washingtons different. Water-touched, they call us, half fearful, half respectful. I always thought it was just old superstition or maybe plain racism. Now I'm not so sure. I step outside onto the porch, staring at the dark water below. For a second, I think I see lights moving deep beneath the surface, forming patterns too perfect to be fish or reflections. My hand touches my neck where the rough patches are spreading, and I remember what the Navy doctor whispered when he thought I couldn't hear. It's not a condition. It's an evolution. The water seems to rise slightly toward the cabin, as if reaching for me. I step back inside and lock the door, knowing full well that whatever's coming for me won't be stopped by a simple lock, because it's already inside. Me. It's been there since that day in 45 when I dove too deep and brought something back, something that's been waiting for the right time to finish what it started. The next morning, I wake up with sand in my bed. Not just a little, but enough to make me think I'd been sleeping on a beach. My feet are caked with mud, but I know I didn't go outside last night. At least I don't remember going outside. Marcus found more things, Josephine tells me at breakfast. Her voice is quiet, worried. She pushes a small pile of objects across the table, a stone carving, a piece of metal that doesn't look like any metal I've seen before, and what looks like a coin with markings I can't read. "Where's he finding these?" I ask, though I already know the answer. "In the water, Daddy. He says they come to him." She leans closer. "I watched him yesterday. He was under for nearly 5 minutes. When I pulled him up, he wasn't even breathing hard. I feel my stomach drop. Don't let him in the water alone anymore." I try, but he sneaks out. It's like the water calls to him. After breakfast, I take the boat out, telling Josephine I'm going fishing. But fishing is the last thing on my mind. I need to see what's below us. The spot directly under our cabin looks normal enough from the surface. But when I drop my old Navy depth finder into the water, it goes crazy, showing readings that make no sense. Depths that change by hundreds of feet in seconds. Structures where there should be nothing but mud. I'm about to pull up the line when something tugs on it. Hard. Not like a fish or snag, but like someone down there grabbed it. I let go of the line like it's on fire and start the motor. Heading back to the cabin. When I tie up at our dock, the boat's not where I left it. I know I left it on the east side, but now it's tied to the west. I check the gas gauge. It's lower than it should be, like the boat took a trip without me. That night, I wake up to the sound of Marcus talking. It's 3 a.m, according to my bedside clock. I follow his voice to the porch, where he stands in his pajamas, staring at the water. "Who are you talking to, boy?" I ask, my voice shaking more than I wanted to. "The people under the water," he says simply. "They're building something. They say it's almost ready." I grab his shoulders. "There aren't any people under the water." "Marcus," he looks at me with eyes too old for his face. "Yes, there are, Grandpa, and they know you. They've been waiting for you to come back." A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the night air. I take him back to bed, but I don't sleep again that night. The next day, while Marcus and Josephine are in town getting supplies, I pry up more floorboards in my room. Behind the old Navy papers is something I've kept hidden for years. A waterproof container with samples from Operation Deep Evolution. Inside are vials of water, small tissue samples, and photographs so strange the other sailors called them fake. One photo shows what looks like an underwater doorway built into what should be solid rock. Another shows markings carved into stone that match the patterns I sometimes see in my dreams. I pull out my Navy discharge papers. The official reason says medical discharge, but the real diagnosis is scribbled in the margin. Aquatic psychological aberration with physical manifestations. The doctor told me it was from too much time underwater, pressure messing with my brain. But I know better now. I hide everything when I hear the car pull up. Josephine comes in looking pale. "What's wrong?" I ask. "People in town were talking about us." She puts the grocery bags down slowly. "Old Mr. Thibodeau at the store asked if Marcus was showing the signs yet. When I asked what he meant, everyone got quiet. Where is Marcus now?" "In his room. He brought up something else from the water on the way back. A box this time. He wouldn't let me see inside it. I go to his room and find him sitting on the floor with a small box made of some dark material. It's open, empty. What was in there, boy?" "Just water," he says. "Special water." I drank it. My heart nearly stops. "You what?" It told me to. It said it would help me see better. That night I hear dripping. I follow the sound to the bathroom and find water pooling under the door. When I push it open, I find Josephine sitting fully clothed in the tub, which is filled to the brim with bayou water, leaves, twigs, and all. "Joe," I whisper. She turns slowly, and in the dim light I see it. The same rough patches on her neck that I've been hiding on mine. Her eyes are different too, larger somehow, reflecting light like an animal's at night. "The water feels right, Daddy," she says in a strange, calm voice. "It feels like coming home." Later, I check on Marcus. Again. His bed is empty, the window open. When I rush outside, I see ripples in the water below, moving away from the cabin. I call his name, panic rising in my throat. Just when I'm about to jump in after him, his head breaks the surface. He climbs up the ladder to the dock, completely dry despite having been underwater. "You shouldn't go in the water at night," I scold him, relief making my voice shake. "It's not safe." He looks at me with those two old eyes. "It's safer than up here, Grandpa. They told me what's coming." "Who told you? What's coming?" But he just walks past me to his room. The next morning, I find something new has emerged from the water. Our old family boat, the one that sank in a storm 10 years ago, is tied neatly at our dock. It doesn't have a scratch on it, looking brand new despite having been underwater for a decade. I touch it carefully. The wood is dry, like it never sank at all. Inside on the seat is a small box identical to the one Marcus had, but this one has my name scratched into its surface. I know I shouldn't open it. Every instinct tells me to throw it back into the water, to grab Marcus and Josephine and drive far away from this place. Instead, My hands move on their own, lifting the lid. Inside is a single piece of paper, waterproof, like the pages in our family Bible. On it, in handwriting, I recognize as my grandfather's are just 3 words. They're coming home. I can't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see the underwater door from that old Navy photo. And now, Josephine and Marcus are changing too. Whatever's happening to me is happening to them faster. This morning I noticed Josephine wearing a scarf, even though it's hot enough to fry an egg on the porch. When she reached for the coffee pot, her sleeve pulled back. Between her fingers was a thin, almost clear skin, like a web. She saw me looking and quickly pulled her sleeve down. "Joe," I say gently, "we need to talk about what's happening." She turns away. "Nothing's happening, Daddy." "I know about the patches on your neck. I have them too." She freezes, then slowly unwinds the scarf. The patches on her neck have grown into slits like gills. "Just like mine. What's happening to us?" she whispers. I tell her everything. About Operation Deep Evolution, about the Navy finding something in the bayou water that changed the men who touched it, about how they sent us down anyway, about the dreams I've had ever since, where I'm swimming through halls built by hands that weren't human. "The water is changing us, isn't it?" she asks. I nod slowly. "I think it's been changing our family for generations. That's why the Bible has those warnings." Later that day, while Josephine watches Marcus, I use the boat to follow the underwater map from my Navy papers. It leads me to a small island about 2 miles from our cabin. Nothing special about it, just a patch of land rising from the water. But as I wade ashore, my feet hit something hard and flat, not mud or sand, but something man-made. I dig with my hands and uncover a metal plate with a familiar symbol, the same one from Operation Deep Evolution. It takes me an hour to clear away enough mud to find the handle. When I pull, nothing happens at first. Then, with a rush of foul air, the door opens. Steps lead down into darkness. I should turn back. Every bit of sense I have tells me to leave this place. But I need answers. The tunnel is dry at first, old concrete walls feeling military in their plainness. My flashlight beam shows footprints in the dust, some fresh. Someone's been here recently. The tunnel slopes down until I hear water dripping. The walls change from concrete to stone, then to something else, smooth surfaces with swirling patterns that seem to move in my flashlight beam. I find a room with old equipment, military radios, diving gear, and files in rusty cabinets. The papers inside are mostly ruined by moisture, but a few protected by plastic covers are still readable. One catches my eye. Subject Bloodline Analysis, Washington Family. My hands shake as I read it. The Navy didn't pick me by accident. They'd been tracking my family for generations. The report talks about genetic markers consistent with primary contact subjects and accelerated adaptation potential. Another file has photos of my grandfather talking to men in military uniforms. The date says 1923, 20 years before I was even born. The last page makes my blood run cold. Subject E. Washington exhibits most promising transformation markers. Recommend continued monitoring of bloodline for complete adaptation event. They've been watching us for generations. A noise from deeper in the tunnel makes me look up. It sounds like voices, but not quite. More like the memory of voices, whispering just below where I can understand. I follow the sound until the tunnel opens into a large chamber. The floor is covered in shallow water that seems to glow with a faint light. On the walls are symbols that match the ones in the old photos, but these are moving, rearranging themselves as I watch. In the center of the room is a perfect circle of water, still as glass, despite the ripples that should come from my movement. As I get closer, I see it's not a pool, but a hole, perfectly round, leading down into darkness, and something is coming up. I run. I don't stop until I'm back in the boat, engine roaring as I speed away from the island. My heart feels like it might burst from my chest. When I get back to the cabin, Marcus is sitting on the dock, feet dangling in the water. He looks at me with those old eyes. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asks. "The door to the deep place." "How do you know about that?" "They showed me. In here." He taps his head. "They show me lots of things." "Who are they, Marcus?" "The first people, the ones who were here before. They say we're ready now." That night, I search the cabin while Josephine and Marcus sleep. Under the main room, I find a loose board that reveals a small space. Inside is a box of old letters. They're from my grandmother to my grandfather while he was away during the First World War. Most are normal love letters, but in the last few, she sounds scared. She writes about strangers asking about our boy and men watching the house. The final letter is different from the rest. The handwriting shaky. They found what they were looking for in our blood. God help us, James. They found the old one's mark in us. Don't come home. Run as far from water as you can. But he did come home, just like I did. A loud splash outside makes me jump. From the window, I see Marcus standing on the dock in his pajamas. The water around him is bubbling and rising up in strange shapes, almost like hands reaching for him. I rush outside, calling his name. As I reach the dock, the water suddenly goes flat and still. Marcus turns to me, his face peaceful. "Grandpa, I need to show you something," he says. "Something important in the water." "Not now, boy. It's the middle of the night." "It has to be now," he insists. "The doors only open at night." A chill runs through me. "What door, Marcus?" "The one to home," he says simply, and points down into the dark water. For just a second, the water seems to clear, becoming transparent as glass. And I see it. An enormous structure below our cabin. All angles and curves that hurt my eyes to look at. At its center is a doorway, glowing with soft blue light. Then the water turns dark again, hiding whatever lies beneath. "They're waiting for us," Marcus says. "All of us." Behind me, I hear the cabin door open. Josephine walks out slowly, her scarf gone, the gills on her neck opening and closing in the night air. "I can hear them too now, Daddy," she says. "They're calling us home." I wake up wet, not damp from sweat, but soaking wet like I'd been swimming in my clothes. My bed is dry beneath me, but my nightclothes drip onto the floor. It doesn't make any sense. When I look in the mirror, I barely recognize myself. The patches on my neck have grown larger, spreading across my shoulders. When I touch them, they feel slick and smooth, like a fish's skin. In the harsh bathroom light, I can see thin lines forming in the patches. Not quite open, but getting there. I'm becoming something else, just like Josephine. Just like Marcus seems to have been from the start. At breakfast, none of us talk about what happened on the dock last night. Josephine cooks eggs that no one eats. Marcus draws pictures of strange buildings with his crayons. Buildings no child, his age, could imagine, with angles that seem wrong somehow. "We need to leave this place," I say finally. "Today. Pack your things." Josephine looks at me with those changed eyes. "And go where, Daddy? You think this won't follow us?" "We can try," I insist. "There's got to be somewhere the water can't reach us." Marcus doesn't look up from his drawing. "The water is everywhere, Grandpa. In the ground, in the air, in our bodies. We can't run from what we are." His words send a chill through me. No, 10-year-olds should talk like that. After breakfast, I go to pack my things. The calendar on my wall catches my eye. It's June 17th. Something about that date nags at me. I check my old Navy papers and feel my stomach drop. June 17th, 1945, was the date of the incident, when I closed the hatch on my drowning teammates. Exactly 18 years ago today, I hear car engines outside. Looking through the window, I see 3 black government cars pulling up to our cabin. Men in suits get out, looking up at our home like they've been here before. I grab my shotgun from under the bed and go to the front room. "Josephine, take Marcus to the back bedroom and stay there." Who are they? She asks, fear in her voice. I don't know, but they're not local. The men are too clean-cut, too official-looking to be from around here. A knock comes at the door. Firm, confident. Mr. Washington, Emmanuel Washington, we're from the government. We need to speak with you about Operation Deep Evolution. My blood runs cold. No one is supposed to know about that operation. All these years I thought it was buried, forgotten. What do you want? I call through the door. We're not here to cause trouble, Mr. Washington. We're here because of the changes you and your family are experiencing. We can help. Help? After what they did to us? After watching my family for generations? I don't need your help, I shout. Leave us alone. The transformations are accelerating, Mr. Washington, not just in your family. We've detected increased activity in the underwater structure. We need your cooperation. Structure. They know about what's under our cabin. If you don't open the door, we'll have to force our way in, for your safety and the safety of your family. I'm about to tell them exactly what they can do with their safety when something strange happens. The cabin shudders, like something hit it from below. The water around us begins to churn and bubble. The men outside notice it too. They back away from the water's edge, speaking urgently into radios. "Daddy!" Josephine's scream comes from the back bedroom. I run to her, finding her kneeling beside Marcus. The boy is lying on the floor, his body shaking. His eyes are open but rolled back, showing only whites. His mouth moves, forming words I can't understand. "How long has he been like this?" I ask, kneeling beside him. "Just a minute or so." He was fine. Then he just collapsed. Marcus's body suddenly goes still. When he speaks again, his voice isn't his own. It's deeper, older, with an accent I can't place. "The time of return is now," he says. The first ones rise. The water calls its children home. His eyes focus again, finding mine. "They're coming up, Grandpa, all of them." Another shock hits the cabin, stronger this time. From outside, I hear shouting. One of the government men yells something about movement in the water. I go to the window. The water around our cabin isn't just bubbling now. It's moving in patterns, forming shapes that rise up several feet before collapsing back down. The men are retreating to their cars. Suddenly, the water near the dock erupts upward. Something breaks the surface, a curved metallic structure that gleams in the sunlight. It's huge, at least 20 feet across, and covered in the same swirling patterns I saw in the underground chamber. One of the government men points a camera at it. Another reaches into his jacket and pulls out a gun. "No!" I shout, though they can't hear me. "Don't shoot at it!" Too late. The crack of the gunshot echoes across the water. The bullet hits the structure with a dull ping. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the water around the structure begins to glow with a blue light that spreads outward in ripples. Where the light touches, the water becomes clear as glass, revealing glimpses of what lies beneath. Structures, movement, things I can't quite make out. Marcus appears beside me at the window. "They shouldn't have done that," he says softly. "Now the others will wake up too." As if on cue, more structures begin breaking the surface all around us. Some small, some massive. The government men scramble back to their cars, but the water rises around them, cutting off their escape. "We need to go," I say, grabbing Marcus's arm. "Now!" "Go where?" Josephine asks from behind me. When I turn to look at her, I gasp. The gills on her neck are fully formed now, opening and closing as she breathes. Between her fingers, the webbing has grown more pronounced. "Somewhere dry," I say, though I'm not sure such a place exists anymore. I grab the family Bible and my Navy papers, stuffing them into a waterproof bag. Josephine gathers some clothes and food. As we step onto the porch, I can see that the government men are trapped. The water has risen around their cars, forming walls that block their path. They're shouting into radios, but I doubt anyone is coming to help them. "This way," I say, leading my family to our boat. But when we reach the dock, I stop short. The boat is gone. In its place, floating perfectly still despite the churning water all around, is something else. A vessel made of the same material as the structures, shaped like nothing I've ever seen before, and standing on it, watching us with eyes too large for a human face, is a figure that makes my heart stop. "Hello, Emmanuel," it says in a voice that sounds like water flowing over stones. "We've been waiting for you to come home." The figure looks almost human, but not quite. Its skin has a bluish tint, and where there should be ears, there are fin-like structures. Its hands have long fingers with webbing between them. It's what I'm becoming, what my family is becoming. "Who are you?" I manage to ask. "We are the first ones," it says, "and you are our children, returning at last." Behind me I hear Marcus and Josephine step forward, drawn to the figure like moths to a flame. "Don't," I say, trying to hold them back, but my own body betrays me. The patches on my skin tingle and warm, and I feel a longing so deep it makes my knees weak. The figure extends a hand. "Come, see what waits beneath." Water rises around our feet, lifting us gently. I try to fight it, but it's like fighting gravity. We're carried forward toward the strange vessel and the figure that waits to take us home. Home to the deep place that's been calling us all along. The strange boat moves without an engine. It glides through the water like it's part of it. I hold Josephine's hand tight, but Marcus stands at the front with the blue-skinned figure, talking quietly like they're old friends. "Where are you taking us?" I demand. The figure turns those two large eyes on me. "Home, Emmanuel, to the place your blood has been calling you for generations." Around us the water begins to clear, becoming transparent like glass. I look down, and my breath catches in my throat. Below us is a city, not ruins, not structures, but a full city with buildings and roads and lights, all underwater. "My God," Josephine whispers, "it's been here all along." "Since before your kind walked on dry land," the figure says. "We were the first civilization on this world." The boat stops above what looks like a large dome. A circle of water beneath us begins to swirl, opening like a whirlpool, but strangely controlled. A perfect round doorway into the air below. "This is impossible," I say. "There can't be air down there." "There is much you don't understand yet," the figure replies. "But you will." The boat begins to sink, passing through the water doorway. When we emerge on the other side, we're in a huge round room with a high ceiling that somehow holds back the water above us. The air feels strange, thick and moist, but breathable. As we step off the boat, I notice my neck doesn't hurt anymore. The patches, the gills, they feel right here. Natural. I can breathe easier than I have in years. "What is this place?" I ask. "The first city," the figure says. "One of many we built before the Great Change forced us deep." Marcus walks beside the figure like he belongs here. "They had to hide, Grandpa," he explains. "When the world changed and the water pulled back, they went deeper to survive. And now they're coming back up," I say, putting the pieces together. "That's what this is about." The figure nods. The cycle completes. The waters rise again. Those with the old blood return. First, to prepare the way, we're led through hallways that seem to be made of the same strange material as the boat. Not quite metal, not quite stone. The walls glow softly, lighting our way without any bulbs or lamps. We pass rooms where more of the blue-skinned people work at tasks I can't understand. Some look almost human, others less so. They all stop to watch us pass. "These are your cousins," the figure tells us. "Those who returned before you." "Returned?" Josephine asks. "You mean humans who changed? Like us?" "Your kind were never meant to be what you became," the figure says. "The drying of the world was a temporary crisis. Your ancestors adapted to survive on land, but it was always meant to be temporary. We enter a vast circular chamber. At its center is a pool of glowing blue water. Around the walls are markings, the same swirling patterns I've seen in my dreams. This is where it began, the figure says, where we first changed your ancestors, giving them the gift of land walking while preserving the water memory in their blood. Images appear in the air above the pool, pictures that move like a movie without a screen. They show creatures that look like the blue-skinned figure evolving, changing, becoming more like humans. You made us, I ask, horror dawning. We saved you, the figure corrects. When the waters receded, we changed some of our children to survive in the new world. You are their descendants. The images shift, showing early humans building temples around water, worshipping figures that look like our blue host. Your ancestors remembered us as gods, the figure says. They kept the bloodlines pure, waiting for the day of return. But something happened, Marcus says, speaking as if he's known this story all along. The memory faded. Yes, the figure nods. Humans forgot their origin. They moved away from water, built in dry places, feared the deep. But some bloodlines remained true, like yours, Emmanuel. My mind races back to the family Bible, the warnings about returning to the deep. They weren't warnings, they were instructions, preserved across generations. The Navy, I say suddenly, they found you. They found traces of us, the figure corrects, enough to be curious. They sent you and others with the old blood to investigate, hoping you would connect with what lay below. And you did, though. You didn't understand it then. The images show Operation Deep Evolution. Me and other divers exploring underwater ruins. I see myself touching a wall with the swirling patterns. See something pass from the wall into my hand, into my blood. You activated the change in me, I whisper. We awakened what was already there, the figure says. And now the time has come for all to return. The waters will rise. The land time ends. You're talking about flooding the world, I say, horror growing, killing billions of people. Not killing, the figure says calmly. Returning. Those with the old blood will change, as you are changing. The others. It makes a gesture like a wave washing away sand. Josephine steps forward, her face pale. You can't do that. Those are people. Families, children. How many waterkin did landwalkers destroy? The figure asks. How many were hunted, captured, studied? How many died as your kind poisoned the waters with your waste? I remember stories of strange creatures caught by fishermen, displayed in carnivals, dissected by scientists. Were they trying to return too early? Had the change begun in them before the right time? There must be another way, I say. The decision is not yours to make, Emmanuel Washington, the figure replies. The process began long ago. Even now, the waters rise around the world. Strange tides, coastal flooding, islands disappearing. The first signs. It gestures to the pool, and the images change again, showing news clips of flooding cities, rising sea levels, strange weather patterns. Things I've read about in papers, dismissed as normal disasters. Your government knows, the figure continues. They've been monitoring the changes, tracking bloodlines like yours, preparing their own escape to high ground. But there will be no escape. Is that why they came to our cabin? Josephine asks. To warn us? To use you, the figure corrects. They hope to control the change, to harness it. They've been experimenting with the old blood for generations. A terrible thought occurs to me. Marcus's father, Josephine's husband, selected for her, the figure nods, to strengthen the bloodline. Your government has been breeding your family for generations, Emmanuel, creating perfect vessels for the return. Josephine makes a choking sound. That's why he was chosen for me, why they pushed us together. I was an experiment. The cruelty of landwalkers knows no bounds, the figure says. They use even their own kind as tools. I feel sick. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, even my time in the Navy, all manipulated, controlled. What happens now? I ask. Now you choose, the figure says. Join us willingly, complete your transformation, and help guide the others of your bloodline, or resist and let the change take you anyway. Painfully, confusingly, alone, Marcus speaks up, his voice sounding older, wiser. They can help us, Grandpa. They can make the change easier. They've been waiting for us. I look at my grandson, really look at him, and see the changes more clearly now. His eyes are larger, his fingers slightly webbed. He was born closer to what they are than what I am. And if we join you, I say slowly, what then? Then you help us prepare the way, the figure says. The full rising comes with the next moon. There are others like you who must be gathered, guided. You know the land world. You can move among them still. You want us to be your spies, I say bitterly. We want you to save those who can be saved, the figure corrects. Your family, your friends, any with the old blood. Bring them to water, before the great rise, and they will survive. Leave them ignorant, and their change will come too suddenly, too painfully. I look at Josephine, at the gills now fully formed on her neck, at her hands with the growing webs between her fingers. I look at Marcus, so calm, so accepting of what he's becoming. Then I look down at my own changing body. We're becoming something else, something older than humanity. And I don't know if I should fight it or embrace it. The figure extends a webbed hand. The water has been calling you home your whole life, Emmanuel. It's time to answer. Behind us, I hear the sound of splashing, of people entering the dome. When I turn, I see the government men from our cabin, but they're different now, changed like us, with patches on their necks and webbing between their fingers. You see, the figure says, even those who came to stop us carry the old blood. No one escapes their true nature. One of the men steps forward, his suit dripping wet. Mr. Washington, he says, his voice gurgling slightly. We need to talk. The government man stands before us, water dripping from his suit. The sides of his neck pulse with new gills. His eyes have that same changed look that Josephine's and mine have. Mr. Washington, he says again, I'm Agent Miller. We've been watching your family for a long time. So I've learned, I say coldly, using us like lab rats. Miller shakes his head. It's more complicated than that. We've been trying to understand what's happening, trying to control it. You can't control this, the blue figure says. The rising comes whether you wish it or not. Miller ignores the figure and focuses on me. Mr. Washington, we need your help. The transformation is spreading faster than we predicted. Coastal cities are reporting strange cases, people developing changes, like yours, like mine. And you want me to what? Help you round them up? Experiment on them? We want to help them, Miller insists. The change is painful, confusing for those who don't understand it. Some are dying from it. I think about my own transformation, how I fought it for years, how it almost drove me mad. Tell him the rest, the blue figure says. Miller glares at it, then sighs. There's another faction in the government. They don't want to help the changed ones. They want to eliminate them. They're afraid, with good reason, the figure adds. Your kind always fears what it doesn't understand. I look at Josephine and Marcus, my family, the people I've always tried to protect. What exactly do you want? From me, I ask Miller. We have safe zones set up, places where people like us can go through the change safely, learn to control it. We need you to help us find others with the bloodline and bring them in before the other faction finds them. And then what? Keep them in camps forever? Study them? Help them survive, Miller says simply. That's all we can do now. The blue figure makes a sound like water bubbling. Laughter, I realize. You still think in such small terms. The water doesn't just call to a few, Landwalker. It calls to all who carry the old blood. Millions scattered across your world. Millions, Josephine whispers. Sleeper bloodlines dormant until now. the figure confirms. The rising waters activate what has been sleeping in their blood for generations. Miller's face goes pale. Our estimates were in the thousands, not millions. Your science is young, the figure says. You see only what you look for. I turn to the blue figure. And what do you want from us? To fulfill your purpose. Every changed one who returns strengthens the call to others. You could bring many home. I feel the weight of both choices pressing down on me. Help Millers. People manage the changed ones, keeping them separate, controlled, but alive. Or help these ancient beings bring others home to the rising waters. Neither feels right. There's got to be another way, I say. What other way is there, Grandpa? Marcus asks, his voice older than his years. We can't stop what's coming. We can only choose which side we're on. Maybe that's the problem, I say slowly. Maybe we shouldn't be choosing sides at all. I look around the chamber at the glowing pool, at the images still floating above it showing the rising waters around the world. Those markings, I say, pointing to the swirling patterns on the walls. I've seen them before, not just in my dreams or in Navy photos. They're in our family Bible, hidden in the designs around the pages. The blue figure goes very still. Your ancestors were wise to preserve the old knowledge. I turn to it. What do those symbols really mean? The truth. For the first time, the figure hesitates. They are control marks. The symbols that guide the rising and falling of waters, so they can stop the rising too. That is not their purpose now, the figure says quickly, too quickly. Miller steps forward. What is he talking about? What rising? The flood, I tell him. These beings aren't just changing people like us. They're planning to raise the waters. Worldwide. Drown everyone who can't change. Miller's hand moves to his gun. Is that true? The blue figure makes a gesture. The water around Miller's feet suddenly rises, wrapping around him like a snake, covering his mouth and nose. He struggles, eyes wide. Stop! I shout. Let him go! He would interfere with what must be, the figure says calmly. I reach for the gun on Miller's belt. The figure waves his hand, and water wraps around my arm too, but not before my fingers close on the gun. I fire wildly. The bullet misses the figure, but hits the wall behind it, striking directly in the center of one of the swirling patterns. There's a sound, like glass cracking. The pattern begins to glow bright blue, and the entire chamber shudders. The figure screams, a sound like rushing water. What have you done? The water holding Miller and me drops away. The pool in the center of the room begins to bubble and churn. What's happening? Josephine cries, grabbing Marcus. The control mark, the figure hisses. You've damaged it. The balance is disrupted. Water begins to leak from the ceiling, not in drops, but in strange, controlled streams that move like living things. The images above the pool flicker and change, showing waters receding instead of rising. Grandpa! Marcus calls out. He's standing by the pool, his hands held out over it. The water reaches up to him like it's alive, wrapping around his small fingers. I can feel it. The patterns, the numbers, they make sense now. Get away from there, I shout, moving toward him, but Marcus looks at me with eyes that glow blue like the pool. I know what to do, Grandpa. I can feel it in my blood, he begins, to move his hands above the pool, and the water follows his movements, forming swirling patterns in the air that match the ones on the walls. Stop him, the blue figure shouts. He'll ruin everything. Miller raises his gun, pointing it at the figure. Don't move. The figure hisses, but stays still, watching Marcus with those large eyes. What are you doing, boy? I ask, moving closer to my grandson. Fixing it, Marcus says simply. The balance was wrong. They pushed too hard in one direction. Water needs balance. The child speaks truth. Comes a new voice, ancient, deep, like stones grinding together. From the pool rises another figure, this one older, its skin darker blue, almost black, covered in patterns that shift and move like the water itself. Elder, our blue guide gasps. We were only following the plan. You were rushing the plan, the elder says, pushing the waters too fast, too violently. That is not our way. The elder turns to Marcus. The boy has the strongest blood we've seen in generations. He feels the true patterns. What's happening? I ask. The elder looks at me. Your grandson is correcting what these impatient ones would force. The rising will come, yes, but slowly, over generations, as it should, as it always was meant to. And the people? Josephine asks. The ones changing now? They will be the bridge, the elder says, living in both worlds as the waters gradually rise, teaching others to adapt, to remember the old ways, not victims, but guides. Our blue guide makes a sound of disgust, more waiting, after thousands of years. The world changes at its own pace, the elder replies. Force it and it breaks, like these humans you've been changing too quickly, causing pain and fear instead of awakening. Marcus continues moving his hands above the pool, and the images shift again, showing waters rising, yes, but slowly. Coasts gradually changing over decades, people adapting, evolving. This is the true way, the elder says, the way of balance. I look at Miller. Does your safe zone have room for a lot more people? He nods slowly. We can make room. If what the elder says is true, we'll need to. There will be many more like us in the coming years. Suddenly Marcus gasps. His hands drop and he steps back from the pool. The glowing water settles. It's done, he says simply. I fix the pattern, the elder nods, and set it right for generations to come. The chamber shudders again, but gentler this time. The leaking water retreats back into the ceiling. What happens now? I ask. Now you have a choice, the elder says. Stay here with us and learn the old ways, or return to the surface to help those whose blood is awakening. I look at my family, at Josephine with her gills and webbed hands, at Marcus with his ancient eyes and knowledge beyond his years. We're not fully human anymore, but we're not like these water beings either. We're something in between, a bridge, like the elder said. I think we need to go back, I say finally. There are others like us who will be scared, confused. They'll need help understanding what's happening to them. The elder nods. A wise choice, Emmanuel Washington. The waters will rise in their time, not ours. Until then, both worlds must learn to exist together. Miller steps forward. We should go now. My people will be looking for us. As we prepare to leave, the elder approaches Marcus. You have a great gift, child. You understand the patterns in a way few ever have. Will I see you again? Marcus asks. The water connects us all, the elder says. You need only listen to hear us. We're led back to the strange boat. As we rise through the water doorway, I see the underwater city stretching out around us, ancient and beautiful and terrifying. When we break the surface, our cabin is still there, but the water around it has changed. It's clearer somehow, and the strange structures that rose up have mostly sunk back down. It will be a long road, Miller says as we dock. Many won't understand what's happening to them. We'll help them understand, I say, looking at my changed family. We've been running from the water for too long. Maybe it's time to learn how to live with it instead. As we step back onto our dock, I feel the water below us, alive in a way I never noticed before. Not an enemy to fear, but not a home to return to either. Just water. Part of us, yes, but only part. For now, that's enough. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusts her coat as the boat approaches the restricted zone. The Louisiana bayou looks peaceful in the morning light, but the armed guards on the boat remind her this isn't a normal research trip. First time in the zone? Asks Agent Torres, noticing her nervous glance at the water. Yes, she admits. I've only studied the samples they sent to the lab. Torres nods. It's different seeing it up close. Just remember the rules. No direct water contact. Always wear your gloves. Don't remove your monitor bracelet for any reason. The Atchafalaya containment zone has been under government control for 5 years now, ever since the environmental contamination was officially reported. At least, that was the story they told the public. Sarah knows better. She's one of the few scientists cleared to study what's really happening here. "We're approaching Washington Station," the boat driver calls out. Up ahead, Sarah can see a large compound built on raised platforms above the water. Solar panels glint in the sunlight, and several boats are docked at a long pier. "That's our main research facility," Torres explains. "Named after the family who first documented the changes." "The Washingtons," Sarah says. "I've read their journals, at least the parts I was allowed to see." What she read kept her awake for weeks. Stories of transformation, of ancient underwater cities, of people developing gills and webbed hands. If she hadn't seen the biological samples herself, analyzed the changed DNA, she would have thought it was fiction. The boat docks, and Torres leads her up to the main building. Inside, researchers in white coats move between labs, many wearing the same monitor bracelets Sarah has strapped to her wrist. The device checks for early signs of what they now call aquatic adaptation syndrome. "Dr. Washington will meet you in the main lab," Torres says. "He's eager to discuss your findings on the genetic markers." Sarah feels a flutter of excitement. Dr. Marcus Washington is a legend in their field, despite being only 15 years old. A child prodigy who understands the condition better than anyone, because he has it himself. The main lab is larger than she expected, with tanks of water where researchers monitor small aquatic life forms. At a desk in the center sits a young African-American boy. No, not a boy, Sarah corrects herself. Despite his age, Dr. Washington has 3 PhDs and heads the entire research division. He looks up as they enter, and Sarah can't help but stare. At his eyes, larger than normal, with a bluish tint that seems to shift in the light. "Dr. Chen," he says, standing to shake her hand. His fingers are webbed, but only partially, enough to be noticeable, not enough to be disabling. "I'm glad you're here. Your work on identifying dormant genetic markers has been invaluable." "Thank you," she says, trying not to stare. "It's an honor to meet you." Marcus smiles, revealing slightly pointed teeth. "No need for formality. We're colleagues. Come, I want to show you something." He leads her to a large map on the wall, showing the United States with colored dots spread across it. "Each dot represents a confirmed case of AAS," he explains. Red dots are acute cases, full transformation within weeks. Yellow are gradual cases, changes happening over months or years. Green are dormant carriers who might never change unless exposed to an activating agent. Sarah studies the map. "There are thousands, tens of thousands now," Marcus corrects, "and those are just the ones we've identified. Your research helps us find the dormant carriers before they activate unexpectedly." Something about the pattern of dots catches Sarah's attention. They're concentrated near water, not just coasts, but lakes, rivers. "Water calls to water," Marcus says softly, then shakes his head. "Sorry, that's something my grandfather used to say. But yes, proximity to water seems to accelerate the process. And these cases, they're all being helped?" Marcus's expression darkens slightly. "The ones we find in time, yes. There's still the other faction, the ones who see us as a threat to be eliminated. We lose people to them sometimes." Torres, who has been silent until now, speaks up. "We should show her the journal room. That was the priority in her clearance package." Marcus nods. "Of course, this way, Dr. Chen." They lead her down a hallway to a small, secure room. Inside is a simple table with a single item on it, a battered journal in a clear protective case. "My grandfather's journal," Marcus explains. "The original documentation of the first contact and transformation. You've read excerpts, but there are sections that aren't in the official record." Torres steps out, closing the door behind him. Marcus activates a device that he says will prevent electronic surveillance. "What I'm about to show you isn't known outside our inner circle," he says, his young voice suddenly serious. "There's a reason parts of this journal are classified beyond top secret." He carefully opens the case and turns to the final pages of the journal. "This is my grandfather's last entry, written just before he disappeared 5 years ago." Sarah leans forward to read the faded handwriting. "The government thinks they've contained what's happening here. They've put up fences, posted guards, declared it an environmental disaster, but they don't understand. This isn't just happening in the Louisiana Bayou. It's everywhere. The water is everywhere, in the ground, in the air, in our bodies, and the change is in the water now. Every drop carries the potential to awaken what's been sleeping in human blood for thousands of years. I've studied the patterns Marcus set in motion in the underwater city. The slow rising will happen over generations, not years. But the transformation of those with the old blood, that can't be stopped or contained. It's already spreading through groundwater, through rain, through the water cycle itself. Some of us will change completely, returning to the deep. Others will remain between worlds, like my Josephine and Marcus. And many will carry the dormant potential, passing it to their children, a time bomb in their DNA, waiting for the right moment to activate. The water remembers what we were before, what we will be again, in time. I feel the final change coming. For me now. The water calls me home at last. I don't fear it anymore. To whoever finds this, the rising has already begun. Not with a flood, but with a whisper in our blood. Sarah looks up, her throat dry. Is this true? The water itself is carrying the agent that causes the transformation? Marcus nods slowly. Every test confirms it. The molecular structure of water, worldwide, is gradually changing, becoming more like the water in ancient times. It's too subtle for most instruments to detect, but it's happening. But that means, yes, Marcus says quietly, eventually, anyone with the genetic potential will begin to change. Millions of people, possibly more. Not all at once, not catastrophically, but gradually, over decades. The balance my grandfather and I helped set ensures that. Sarah feels a chill. And the government knows this? Some do. Others refuse to believe it. That's why we need people like you, Dr. Chen. People who can help us identify those at risk, prepare them, ease their transition. Sarah's mind races with implications. But why show me this? Why tell me? Marcus looks at her steadily with those strange, beautiful eyes. Because you have the markers too, Dr. Chen. Dormant, but present. I could sense it the moment you walked in. She instinctively touches her neck, feeling nothing unusual. That's impossible. I was screened. My DNA was tested. Our tests are more advanced, Marcus says gently. Your transformation, if it comes, is likely years away. But now you understand why this work is so important. It's not just research, it's preparation for what's coming for all of us. Sarah stares at her reflection in a glass cabinet door. She looks normal, human. But so did Emmanuel Washington once, before the water called him home. What do you want from me? She asks finally. Help us, Marcus says simply. Help us understand the change better. Help us find others. Help us prepare the world, slowly, carefully, for what's coming. Sarah looks back at the journal, at Emmanuel Washington's final warning. She thinks of the water she drank this morning, the shower she took, the rain that fell on her skin. The ordinary, everyday water that might be changing her even now, awakening something ancient in her blood. And if I refuse? She asks, though she already knows the answer. Marcus smiles sadly. You can leave right now. Go back to your life. Pretend. You'd never read this, but the water is patient, Dr. Chen. It has waited thousands of years. It can wait for you too. Sarah feels something strange. Not fear, but a kind of wonder mixed with acceptance. She thinks of the samples she studied, the changed DNA that seem both alien and strangely familiar. "I'll help," she says finally. "Where do we start?" Marcus's smile widens, revealing those slightly pointed teeth again. "We start with the truth, the whole truth." He reaches for a folder on a nearby shelf. These are reports from coastal cities. Worldwide, unusual tide patterns. People experiencing strange dreams about water. Children born with small gill-like structures that doctors mistake for birth defects. "It's already happening," Sarah whispers. "It's been happening since before my grandfather was born," Marcus corrects. "We're just finally paying attention." As if responding to his words, Sarah's monitor bracelet beeps softly. She looks down at it, seeing the normal green light still glowing steadily. Just a routine check, not an alert. Not yet, anyway. Outside the window, she can see the bayou stretching into the distance, the water calm and innocent in the afternoon sun. Just water, doing what water has always done, flowing, changing, shaping the world around it, and perhaps shaping humanity's future in ways no one could have imagined. Except for Emmanuel Washington, who saw the truth beneath still waters, and chose to help us find a way to live with what we're becoming, whatever that might be.